Musa finds Dean again along that left side. Nobody's going to touch him. And into the end zone. Second score for Dean. 53 yards. Touchdown, Rattlers.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
4 receivers on here on 3rd and 10. Morton all kinds of time to the end zone. And a touchdown hauled in by Loic Fungi.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Schlee is going to run it again, and the speed of Colin Schlee down the sideline to the 15 and all the way inside the 10. Finally tackled by Shea Oladipo to save a touchdown. For now, it's going to be 1st and goal, UCLA.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Hunt sheds 2 tackles. Are you serious with this guy? He's in again. His 5th touchdown today. Ricky Hunt going nuts in Myrtle Beach.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
4th and what feels like the ball game. Here's the blitz. Webb downfield, touchdown, Perry Carter. And now the question, do you kick or do you go for the lead?
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Mikey Keene, 12 for 12. Passing goes to the end zone. A laser caught by Jalen Gill for a touchdown. How about Mikey Keene? He can't miss.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on 365 Sports on a wet, drizzly, damp Thursday afternoon where we are, and maybe where you are too. We have a show that is loaded. We're going to hear in just a moment from Baylor quarterback Dequan Finn. We'll also hear from someone that he knows very well and knows him. In former Michigan quarterback Devin Gardner, Dan Wetzel, Cassum on Florida State. The story today that FSU is trying to look with a board meeting tomorrow to get out of that ACC grant of rights. And speaking to that, Bob Thompson will join us. Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com, Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak, and thank you for your time today. And we are joined on 365 Sports by Baylor quarterback Dequan Finn right here on this Thursday afternoon. Dequan, thank you so much for your time. When I say Baylor quarterback Dequan Finn, what does that mean to you?
Thanks for having me. It's a new ringtone. It's a new ring to it. I have got to get used to it, but it feels good and nice to finally find a place called home. So,
what has this process been like for you with the transfer portal and eventually you make the decision? You announced your commitment on Sunday evening. What has this been like since you entered the portal?
It's been a lot. I'm very thankful for all the schools that have been reached out to me and stuff like that. It's been a process for sure. Just seeing random numbers call your phone every single minute of the day. It's kind of like, all right, who is this? You don't know if it's a coach or just you don't know what it is. But it's been kind of it's been good so far, and I'm just thankful I finally found a place called home. So.
Dequan, how did this portal experience, I know it wasn't long lasting, it wasn't like, a whole year or anything like that, but how did that compare to your original recruiting experience that led you to college football originally, and just kind of, what led you to Baylor ultimately as well? What was it about them?
Yeah, it's very different, from high school to now. I kind of wasn't that, that recruited guy, coming out of high school, kind of underrated guy, but now, being in the transfer portal, and it just gives you a whole different horizon of, a different perspective on certain things as far as the recruitment process goes. But, I feel as though Baylor was the right fit for me. I feel as though the atmosphere was just, I just felt like home. So as soon as I stepped foot on campus. Just being with Coach, seeing Coach Arande, just seeing Coach Pavel, just seeing all the coaching staff, just seeing the whole coaching staff, and just seeing, the hospitality that they gave me. Just being there just felt like, like a home vibe, and I can very much see myself at Baylor. So,
how would you describe, if you could, in a word or even in a sentence, your time and your thoughts on Dave Aranda?
Smart. I'll say that for sure. When we talk ball, he knows what he's talking about. You can tell by his approach. You can tell by the dialect in his voice and cadence. You can tell that he's very serious about ball, and I'm sure the whole city of Waco is too. As far as how that goes, you can tell they want to win. You can tell. You can see it in his face. You can see it in his demeanor. You can see it in everyone else's face and demeanor. You can just tell his seriousness for the love of the game, and that's one thing I'll describe. That's one thing I'll describe. For Coach Aranda. So.
Dequan, how have you grown as a player in your time in college thus far compared to when you came out in high school originally? And for those who haven't seen a lot of you playing or Toledo playing, what would you kind of give as a scouting report of yourself?
I'll say exciting football. I describe myself as, a complete quarterback. Being at Toledo allowed me, develop my abilities to allow my ability to help myself be a complete quarterback. As far as everybody knew I was, known for, when a play break down, I could just use my legs to escape out of problems. But now being able to 2-time the defense with my arm and my legs, so it's kind of like 2 for 1. And it just keeps the defense on their toes, and it just allows me to have more freedom and play like myself, at this level. So I'll say one word to describe me is exciting. So
yeah, you obviously, as a dual threat, I've seen videos. Everybody has seen some of the highlights when you were at Toledo, what you could do throwing the football to your receivers. When you have that kind of ability to run, was that something, as you kind of mentioned that, but is that something that if all hell broke loose, you could just run? But now when there's just confusion or chaos or something breaks down, you're just as comfortable as throwing the football to one of your receivers?
Yeah, absolutely. And now I kind of feel as though it's more of just, extended plays now, as far as, my running ability. I kind of see it as a plus, just being able, like I said, playing enough football to know when to run, when not to run, when to throw it, when not to throw it, when to take certain hits and when not to take certain hits. So it's like, just playing those type of games just allowed me, just feel the game better out. And just being able to, like I said, play more free. Because now I'm not running just to run now. It's more like just to extend the play now. You see, like, a lot of quarterbacks in the league, or just, I'm not even comparing myself, but just for an example, like, for instance, like Pat Mahomes, like you see, for instance, like when a pocket breaks down, you see him extend the plays with his legs. And it allows him to, use his arm to find more receivers open and things of that nature. So, like I said, I don't want to compare myself, but I'm just using that as a reference. But, just being able to, like I said, 2-time the defense is, like I said, is very helpful. So.
Dequan, we talked about, Aranda and Spavital. There's obviously a lot of quarterbacks out there in the transfer portal, just a lot of players in general, a lot of different schools coming after you. You talked about what made sense for you in Baylor, but what was Baylor's message to you, whether it was Coach Spavital or Coach Aranda? Why did they say that they wanted you in particular, and what was it about you and your game that they want to transfer over, or what did they say they kind of want to see from you here in Waco?
Yeah, this album was a great person first and great player second, and that's one thing I kind of stuck out in me for Coach Aranda, because a lot of guys, they'll just, I'm not calling nobody out, but it's player first, person second, and he emphasized the person, a good person that take care of things off the field will allow you to, it will translate on the field. And that's one thing I kind of took away from Coach Aranda. And, Coach Battle is just like I said, but like with the quarterbacks he had and allowing them, just kind of play not free football, but the numbers that they put up is kind of like it's video game numbers, like Geno Smith, Will Greer, Johnny Manziel, like just to name a few, David Webb, like those guys. I could see myself in this type of offense, just being that type of electrifying guy that can help the team win. Because that's one thing, the coaches noticed about me. They say you're a true winner, and that's one thing I am. I see myself as just a winner because I hate to lose. A lot of people hate to lose, but it's just a different. Like I said, it's just a different feel with me. Like I said, the resume speaks for itself, but like I don't like losing. And that's one thing. The coaches really mentioned for real. So.
State championships in high school, obviously a MAC championship, what you were named as the player of the year and all of that. When you came out of high school, you weren't the dog. You were good, and you had a heck of a career coming out of where you were in Detroit. But you, as you said, even that not quite many people knew much about you. And maybe at times, I was told that your personality was good, but that you were kind of so quiet, reserved, that maybe some schools backed off because they wanted you to be an alpha personality. Is that also something that you've grown into doing over these 4 years at Toledo?
That's kind of funny you say that. Yeah, I am a quiet guy, kind of reserved guy, but also, everyone leads differently, and everyone, sets an example a different way. You might have some guys that lead by example. And then when it's time to say something, the team will listen to you, of course. And your words do mean a lot and it holds a lot of weight. And I feel as though that's kind of like how it was with me. I wasn't going to say too much because I was going to say the right thing at the right time when it's time for the team to hear what I have to say. But being at Toledo, it allowed me to open up more, allowed me to become, open up my personality more, become myself more. And, now it's more of, just, like I said, just being comfortable in my own skin and just allowed me to open up more, being more vocal, talk to guys that I wouldn't normally talk to, and just opening up those type of relationships and those connections that's going to allow, me to, be closer and build that chemistry and bond closer with my teammates. But, yeah, I was quiet for sure when I was young. I'm not going to lie, but now, like I said, I open up way more now. I'm a completely different guy.
Dequan, where'd your love for the game of football come from and grow from? How did that just sort of intertwining of football and your life kind of all come together and get to this point now?
Yeah, my family is a heavy football family. My mom, my dad, put the ball in my crib when I was 3 months. So it's kind of like it's been destined for me, since a young pup. So, and like I said, I love, especially playing quarterback. I played quarterback at the age of 7, 8 years old. Just watching a lot of, Michael Vick and Cam Newton growing up. So it's just kind of been like that. And ever since then, the sky's been the limit.
So I heard you're your mother's son. What does that mean?
Yes, sir. I ain't gonna lie. I'm a mama's boy. So, yeah, that's my rock. Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that there's no doubt. Kia, is that your mother's name? Is that correct?
Lakaya.
Lakaya, I'm sorry, that you are your mother's son. Now, how much has former Michigan quarterback Devin Gardner, who I spoke with a little bit today, we're going to have part of an interview with him about you, about Baylor, and about football a little bit later in the show. How much he's known you for, 6, 7, 8 years since you were 15 years old or so. How much of a role model and mentor has he meant to your life?
Huge mentor to me. I kind of look at him as a bigger brother, as far as just talking to him, he's been in a situation before at a high level. So it's kind of like just paying my respect and just really just soaking up as much game as I can from him. I'm kind of like a sponge when it goes to Devin, because, like I said, he's seen a lot, he's been through a lot, and he knows the rights and wrongs throughout the whole situation. He knows how to maneuver in a way. So it's just kind of like, anything he say, I'm going to listen. And he helped me develop, tremendously from, just being more balanced in my with my throws, not leaning, just staying more vertical, staying more forward with my throws and things of that nature, and having that more spin and velocity and pop when I throw the ball. It just helps a lot, and I can see it in my throwing, I can see it in my play, and it allows me to be more confident on the field as well. So.
You said every time someone either called you or texted you once you entered the portal that it was like bam, 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 whichever direction. Did you sometimes just turn your phone off and just try to enjoy life?
Yeah, I kind of did. I'm not going to hold you. Yeah, it was some points where, I had to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. But because it was like I said, I get phone calls like every 30 minutes. So it was kind of like exhausting at a certain point in time. So I had to just, put my phone on D&D, just taking time to myself and just kind of, clear my mind and just breathe a little, so.
What was it like, Dequan, when you moved to Toledo and you weren't, like I mentioned earlier, you weren't the guy on campus for someone who had been so highly decorated in high school in Detroit that you were, and like championship level caliber. But when you got there, you weren't. How much did you learn about yourself at that time that things just, you had to work for it even more?
Yeah, it definitely was a reality check. But like I said, but that's the adversity that, you got to go through, as a young guy. Just getting acclimated to the college speed and college life. So, once I heard I didn't want to start a job, I use that as motivation. I use that as extra fuel. So there's times I'll grab some of the young receivers and we would just go in the indoor, late at night or 11 o'clock, stuff like that, just getting those type of throws. And then that was like on a consistent basis, though. That wasn't like just here and there. That was every day. I get like one of my roommates, he was my receiver, and that was like my best friend. So anytime we got the chance to go on the field, we had the opportunity. Like it was sometimes we had to sneak in the indoor, just to throw around, just to throw the ball. But that's how hungry I was for the game, and that's how hungry I was to just the need of getting better. Because like I said, ain't nobody's perfect in this world, and I want to make sure I'm the best. Like I said, overall complete quarterback there is in the country. That's nobody's gonna stop from that. And like I said, just being able to the hard work, I said, really separated myself from anybody else at Toledo. And it's like I said, it spoke for itself. And like I said, it's just it's just good to see your hard work start to get recognized and stuff like that. So.
Baylor does have a quarterback room with Sawyer Robertson, who came in from Mississippi State, R.J. Martinez, who was from Northern Arizona. They're on the roster now. On your visit, did you get a chance to see them, visit with them, talk to them at all? And your thoughts about this offense, as you mentioned, with Jake Spavital and the quarterback room and the competition?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to speak with them. I think they were wrapping up finals and things like that. So I think they went home. I think prior, the days before I even got there. But, I'm looking forward to, meeting everyone, just earning everyone's respect in the whole team, and just building that bond and that chemistry within the quarterback room, so it could be a healthy quarterback room in there, no animosity. And I'm just looking forward to, learning from those guys and, just really, and just competing.
No, that's great. Who is Musa El-Mubarak?
Oh, Musa El-Mubarak?
Yeah, tell everybody about the story about your relationship. He's an 8-year-old. He's a part of Devin Gardner's camps, but you have seemed like a pretty good conversation or a rapport with him about him telling you something or vice versa as you have fun with those kids as they're trying to learn how to play the game.
Yeah, Musa is a special one. I seen him when he was, probably like 5 years old, barely know how to throw a football and stuff like that, and just seeing his development and his growth, it's crazy to see that. But Musa, he's a great young kid that has, the sky's the limit for him. He's always smiling, so that's kind of like, that's his personality. He's gonna be the the smile, upbeat little kid. So every time you see him, it just brings you joy and just smiles and just you just know you're gonna have a good time with him. And Musa, he's like I said, a little brother to me. So it's kind of like I have to like show him the way of like how to do it the right way. You know what I'm saying? So just seeing him, doing his thing, it's kind of like extra motivation to me and the rest of the kids. That's a part of Young Go Getters. Just seeing those guys smiling every time I come up back home, and just seeing them, how is it DQ? How is college? Like just them asking those questions, kind of like, yeah, man, I gotta do better for those guys. So it's a surreal moment. I'm just just thankful and happy I had him in my life. So.
Yeah, and I heard he's as excited as the kids are when you started beating Devin in those quarterback type battles you had, those quarterback type games that lit up everybody. You have now a few days to rest and enjoy the Christmas holidays, and then eventually you arrive on campus. What do you get a chance to do now? Is it just chill but keep working out, focused on getting here to Waco and getting ready for the football season, or at least spring drills in a few months?
Yeah, now I'm at home. I'm just like you said, I'm working. Just really just waiting for that day for real. So it's kind of like I got some off time, but now I got my school now, so it's back to work really. So.
Did you know that Devin Gardner wore jersey number 98 when he played quarterback? If you wear 98 at quarterback, you got to be pretty good, right?
Yeah. Actually, I grew up watching him, and I was like, why you got number 98 on? And then at first, he just seeing the meaning behind the number 98, it's kind of like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's like that. So then, it's pretty cool. It's pretty special just seeing, having a guy like that around me every single day. So.
My last question for you. Baylor obviously did not have a very good season. There's a reason why there were changes and why they're also looking for people to come on the roster to help them do better. I know you watched a lot of film of Jake Spavital's offenses and what Baylor did as well. When you committed on Sunday, did you realize, with all due respect to anybody else in the roster or whoever is signed this week, what a breath of energy or so that you shot into the fan base when you announced your commitment? Do you even realize that?
At first I kind of didn't know until like I really started to see it's really starting to get real now. So no, I was kind of surprised just seeing that seeing my commitment blow up like that. But I mean, not kind of surprised, but I was surprised like as far as like the fan base, as far as everyone just blowing up and just saying great things and stuff like that, and it just it's more motivation when you see things like that, and it just brings you more, confidence heading into another team school like that. So it's very exciting. I'm excited. So
they are too. Dequan, thanks for your time. I know it's been a long journey from Detroit to Toledo, and now you're headed to Central Texas around the corner. We appreciate your time. Congratulations on your commitment, and we hope to talk to you again very soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's Dequan Finn. Devin Gardner, I had a chance to visit with him. We'll have that at 4:30 on his thoughts about Dequan Finn and Baylor and what he saw as well when it comes to being on tape. Now, Garrett, today, this morning, we wake up to the news, and if you'll recall, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I mentioned that somebody within administrations at the college level, more than one, multiple, told me that Florida State was going to have one more flare-up before the end of the year. And then you wake up to this news from Matt Fortuna that Florida State has called a virtual Board of Trustees meeting for 10 a.m. on Friday. Ross Dellinger, among others, followed up with this. The meeting, of course, the Board of Trustees will discuss the Seminoles conference future, and the result of the meeting expected to produce a legal filing serving as an initial step to exit from the ACC's grant of rights. Whether or not they can or not, or what they do, that remains to be seen. Dan Wetzel wrote a great article on it. Also, Bob Thompson will join us at 5, former Fox Sports executive, to discuss it. And we'll also have a writer from the Tallahassee Democrat. And Craig, the wheels of realignment never stop.
Yeah, here we are again, and I think just all happening a bit quicker than most anticipated. I mean, the Florida State being unhappy rattling the cage, expressing their intent to do something is nothing new. That's been going on for several months now. It's just a matter of when were they going to pop back up and start talking again. And, I still don't understand the whole, well, it's the ACC's fault or the ACC is to blame for why we didn't get in the playoff. I mean, before you got left out of the playoff, you were already complaining about all the same things about the ACC to begin with. I don't know how that's really changed things except for, I guess, expedite it and start it on a path sooner rather than a little bit later to go ahead and find their way out. But you could tell that was just like an easy final straw to be able to go ahead and just make this move. I think they probably would have made it even without that anyways, but there was just a lot of noise around if they were in the SEC or the Big Ten, they wouldn't have been left out. So now they've got yet another reason, along with the money, along with the exposure, along with, the competitive balance and all of those things to you really have an argument for their fan base, for their board of trustees, for those who maybe aren't all in on exploring getting out. They, I think, have as much of an argument as you could possibly have to show those folks why this needs to happen and why it needs to happen sooner rather than later. So, here they are, and now it looks like they're actually going to take some action of some sort starting tomorrow. And this was pretty apparent that something was about to bust when you had a couple of articles come out yesterday. I mean, that was not a coincidence that Adrian Adelson's writing like a 10-page article on ESPN about this entire situation. And I know that there were others, Ross Dellinger and whoever else, that had similar types of articles that all just so happened to come out yesterday. Like, that's not coincidental.
Nope.
All of these things are leaked and done methodically by certain people involved in stories. And so timing is certainly not suspect. It's the timing was obvious with yesterday's news that something was about to bubble over. And you had mentioned this last week after talking to some folks. So, yeah, here we are. And, the big move for Florida State and perhaps others eventually to leave the ACC for their own OU, Texas, or USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA type of move is moving forward one step at a time, but it's moving forward. And we'll see how many steps are taken tomorrow, but at least one big one will be. They're going to challenge the grant of rights here and over these next few weeks, months, and see what kind of a decision they can come to, what kind of a result they can get. And, they're going to do everything in their power to try and figure out a way out of the ACC with as least damage as possible. And I don't know, I'm not a legal expert. I see a lot of legal experts that don't even have all of this down because it's just so complicated in some ways, and it's unprecedented in some ways, probably what we're about to wade into when you think about a school that's not on the edge of their contract with the TV network ending. This is something that still has a decade plus left on it. So how does all of that work? A lot of people, a lot of speculation over these last few months, and really since OU, Texas, and then especially with USC and UCLA, and eventually Oregon, Washington, and all sorts of other moves that occurred after that. I mean, this has been percolating for a while. Florida State's not hid their feelings, and now, it's just out there in the open that they're going to be, taking a step to go and fight this even more. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, but there's obviously a lot of ramifications that spread all over the country. I saw Brett McMurphy talk about, Oppenheimer-like results, and he's going
to join us tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah, but this is something that's been bubbling for a while, and so now it's about to start boiling here.
Well, Eason Cassum writes for the Tallahassee Democrat. He's a writer who covers FSU. He's at bowl practice. He's going to join us. And then Dan Wetzel, I shared it with Garrett and Craig, wrote a simple and yet brilliant piece on Florida State. And are they going to be the cat or the dog that finally catches the car? Okay, and if they are, then what? And some great quotes, a couple of maybes and coulds and all that. He's going to join us today at 4. Bob Thompson on the legal parts of it today at 5. Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. This is 365 Sports, and Eason Cassum from the Tallahassee Democrat is next. Thank you for joining us, 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas. My dentist is Dr. Steve Childress, and he has been incredible for me. My mental health, sometimes, I don't like to use that too much, but how many times a bad toothache, or you have a cavity, or you're going to have a root canal, or you got to get a tooth pulled, or you have to have something else done, how much does that affect your day? Man, it wears you out, just like maybe anything else in life that you have to deal with that's not perfect. And my dental work was fine, but it wasn't good enough, and it wasn't something I took care of enough other than yes, you brushed your teeth a couple of times a day and you floss on occasion. It's also what you're also like. I used to have lozenges all of the time next to me, traveling, driving, broadcasting, doing the show. It became a habit and only filled with a bunch of sugar. And one time, Dr. Childress asked me, man, why do you have some of this damage in your teeth? And then I told him, he goes, well, that's it. It's like basically sucking sugar into your mouth all of the time. Got off of those. I've been off of them for a while. I'm serious. It was something, it was a habit. And then all of a sudden started the road back to healthy dental work, from a crown that was put in to a root canal to lead to another one, to making sure that my front bridge is fine, to a cavity, getting that fixed, and still much more to do. Dr. Steve Childress, I trust him with every piece of my dental work, and a great friend at Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Don't miss the Wrap Up the Year sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. As the year comes to a close, we're offering unbeatable deals and a wide selection of new 2023 Jeep models like the Grand Cherokee L, Renegade, Gladiator, Wrangler, and the Wrangler 4xe. In addition to incredible savings, we're also offering generous trade-in values for your current vehicle. Upgrade to a newer model while getting the most out of your trade-in. Hurry in, these deals won't last long. Shop our great selection of new inventory and start the new year in style.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient, with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6, and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
So then today you wake up and we showed you the numbers, the tweets, the speculation. And we have 3 different segments today about FSU, the ACC, the grant of rights, and what really can happen next, including Dan Wetzel at 4, Bob Thompson at 5, but Eason Cassum from the Tallahassee Democrat. We've had him on before, covers FSU, joins us on 365 Sports. So you're just kind of going about your business this morning, Eason, and all of a sudden, wham. Did you see this coming? I kind of had an idea that something might happen before the end of the year. Did you see this coming as early as today?
We had a feeling it was coming. It was just a matter of when we were going to get the information that was going to come. It's been a rumor for the past week. We've been digging into trying to find out, and we got to practice this morning. Standing there at the beginning of practice when they were doing stretches, and all of a sudden we got an email from FSU Athletics, and it's like, there's a board meeting, Strusty, tomorrow. So not a shock, but one that we kind of saw coming for a while. And like you mentioned, before the end of the year, there's been a lot of talk around town about something coming up soon, and it just came up today.
So, Eason, what does this mean to you as opposed to, previous discussions? So why, for those who haven't been following along, is this more of an important note than when FSU has rattled the cage in previous months?
Yeah, I mean, I think the college playoff stuff, definitely, I think being the ACC, which I think ironically Florida State dug their own, grave a little bit in that, where they, ripped the ACC before the season. And then kind of we're waiting, where's Jim Phillips to stick up for us? But, this is different. It just feels different. I think last time was just like, we want to stir the cage a little bit. We want to make people feel uncomfortable. But this time it definitely feels like, they're not just going to try stirring the cage this time. If they're doing something, they have to have plan, and that's what the spokesman, they have some, like, at least some plan, something. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I am sure they have something that they're going to bring up to the committee for a vote, to their board of trustees for a vote to move forward. What it is, we're not 100% sure.
Is this a distraction among the team, or have they already had enough of that where this is no big deal?
I mean, it's no big deal. The team is focused on the game. That's the players that have not opted out and are in the portal that are there are focused on the game. So I think they are fine. It's just noise to them. It's like anything else. I think they're not bothered by it. They won't care about it until something comes out of it.
So, Eason, how would you describe the last few weeks just around Tallahassee and amongst the people that you've encountered when it comes to the playoff snub? I mean, what was your reaction initially when you saw that on Selection Sunday, and just how has that kind of continued to go over here in the days since?
Yeah, I mean, it was I was shocked. I honestly thought that, undefeated teams should be in the playoff, especially one in a Power 5 conference and one, as big as the ACC. So I was a little shocked. I understand the 4 best teams argument. I just think the committee did an awful job of trying to explain, because I could buy it, at least these are the 4 best teams, but then it doesn't make sense that Georgia's out. But yeah, that's besides the point. Around town, people have been shocked. It's been you don't want to mention the words ESPN around town. People are still mad about that. There's conspiracy theories going around. People are still angry. There's still a lot of, unanswered questions. I think you've seen, Rick Scott and different politicians have got involved. And it's been a lot. It's interesting to see how upset people still are.
Verse gone. Keon Coleman apparently is on his way to the NFL. Not a surprise. Obviously, Jordan Travis has been out, and yet they're still a very talented football team. Georgia's had a lot of their own hit the transfer portal, opt out too. A game that obviously 2 really good football teams that felt like they should have been a part of the playoff. What do you expect between these two when they play?
I would take Georgia in the points. The difference right now, I just think that they have more depth to overcome the opt-outs. I know Carson Beck's back. That's a huge difference. I have not heard the latest on Brock Bowers, but I just feel like Georgia still has more depth and is a team that could withstand a few more opt-outs and stuff than Florida State. But I expect Florida State to go out there and try and compete. Mike Norvell teams rarely get blown out, but this could be one of the situations where Georgia just is a better team right now on paper.
Is there an excitement level for this game? Do you sense that, or did the fact that the way this all went down and now all of the attention being paid to realignment, I would imagine, has that taken some of the air out of the balloon of what would otherwise be playing a big-time opponent in a big-time game?
No, I think it's definitely been taking a lot of wind out of the sail. I don't think there's the interest that this Orange Bowl is also somewhat a game that's been hurt by what's happened. I think there's a lot of just interest in this game from Georgia fans. Georgia fans expect to be in the playoffs, obviously, every year. They've done that, winning 29 in the last 30 games. Meanwhile, Florida State fans are just, it's hard to, like Mike Norvell talked to us yesterday, or 2 days before practice, after practice, and he just mentioned it still hurts the players, and it's something it's still fresh for them. It's still fresh for the fans. And I just don't see the same excitement for this game that should be. It's an Orange Bowl game, the 90th Orange Bowl, Florida State, Georgia. It should be a fun game. It should be, a lot more excitement. Just, it's been wiped out in Tallahassee and across from Seminole Nation with fans. I just don't sense the same excitement about this game that there would be there if you told them this would be a matchup last year at this time.
Eason, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Eason Cassum with the Tallahassee Democrat with us on the story today about Florida State. Now, one of the two things you got to think about here when it comes to FSU, South Carolina has a team in the SEC. Florida has a team in the SEC. They don't want Clemson, and they don't want Florida State in the SEC. Whether or not that's what's being said now until, as Dan Wetzel reported, or at least wrote, you don't have interest until all of a sudden a team might be available. So that is something to think about. But let's talk about the turf war. Yet A&M thought they had sealed Texas, and now UT is a part of the SEC. That's going to be interesting. We'll have more with that involving Dan Wetzel. Somebody, Roger, I think, said, they want out of the ACC. What's new? This, I think, is going to be more of a true legal filing rather than just barking to hear somebody hear you bark.
Yeah, and I totally understand that sentiment. I kind of wish this would have waited till after Christmas because it's like just all of this is just about to explode right as everybody kind of goes on break. But that'll give us something fun to come back to. But, yeah, I mean, that's a legit question of what's any different from their – Drew Weatherford saying this or this guy saying that or this report saying this. But it's what he just said. It's that they're actually going to legally try to break that grant of rights or figure out how they can break that grant of rights, and they're legally going to challenge that grant of rights and try to find a way to get what they want out of the court system. So that's the difference. Is one thing was talking, they're actually going to try to walk, I guess is the most simple way of putting it. They're actually going to try to walk now rather than just talk. But I hear you. When Florida State says, okay, whatever. But now they're actually going to take some action. And, all the signs were pointing to this eventually, and especially, like I said yesterday, when you had a couple of different stories drop saying pretty much the same thing about how this was imminent, and, here you are a day later, and in fact, that's what's happening. So not totally unexpected. There were little teasers throughout the last few days and even the last few weeks that something was probably coming, even to you mentioning a couple weeks ago that, expect something before the end of the year. So here we are, and it's right before the end of the year, and we're going to go into Christmas break with this news percolating. So, that's the difference. They're going to walk the walk rather than just talk the talk, and we'll see how successful they are with that. But there's obviously a spider web of ramifications. I mean, you mentioned the SEC doesn't want this. We don't know what the SEC does or does not want. I mean, they can say what they want to say now, but it's like any other realignment move that was made over the last few years. What conferences, say exactly what they're thinking all of the time? A lot of it is just defending the idea of poaching and things like that. So, no, we're not interested in Oregon, Washington until Oregon and Washington are readily available for us to go and pick, and then we're going to be really interested, Big Ten. The Big 12 was a little bit more out front and let it be known, I think, because they kind of had to do that to sort of stir the waters a little bit. But, yeah, this is a situation where the SEC can just sit back and watch the chaos unfold. I mean, they're not going anywhere. The team's interest in joining that league's not going anywhere. Same with the Big Ten. So sit back, enjoy your new leagues and their new teams that'll be coming in next year, because this is obviously not something where next year Florida State's in the SEC or the Big Ten and playing football. There's a ways to go here, but those leagues can sit back and just watch the destruction and whatever occurs, and then swoop in when the timing is right and get what they want, just like they did the last time. Like the Big Ten wasn't trying to go get Oregon and Washington and just those two. Yeah, I was thinking UCLA, UC, that was before, but once the Four Corner School started to make their move. Well, then guess who is suddenly ready to be there? This is the exact same thing, in my opinion. And the SEC is just in a position where, they have been a little bit more calm and calculated and a little bit more about we like the contiguous states and we like the grouping that we have. I'm sure you do until, perhaps Florida State's there and available. Now, yes, there will be a Florida that perks up or a South Carolina that perks up with a Clemson, but did A&M not jump up and try to say something? And did that matter in the long run? I don't think it mattered at all. So,
nope.
Everything can be negotiated. Everything can be talked through, and especially when it's in the best interest of the league as a whole. So, that's to come, though. Like, first of all, Florida State's got to actually get out and be able to maneuver and get what they want, and that's going to be a legal battle that we're going to be monitoring. But it is massive news, and you've already seen, the Big 12 mentions and all of that, as far as, if the SEC or the Big 10 weren't interested, then the Big 12 would be there. Of course they would be there, but I'm not so sure it would get to that point, but we're probably a long way there. And then again, there was a thought of mine that this type of move from Florida State, until a couple weeks ago when you started talking about this, but there was a thought that this might, or just more massive moves could be further down the line, and I think everybody is sort of surprised by just how quickly all of this is happening. I mean, it's like as soon as the football season ended, regular season, it's like, here we go back to realignment, right? And so that's probably going to take up, I would imagine, a good portion of the offseason, and good for us, good for fans of realignment, but it is going to be a complicated process.
And here's what, it doesn't affect whoever's in the ACC only. It could affect the Big 12 in them if there is shrapnel. I mentioned that when I was discussing this a couple of weeks ago, but that is so far down the road. But we also thought that was so far down the road, and then there was Texas OU, USC, UCLA, and then the Pac-12 losing 6 schools, and now it's just 2. And then there's Stanford and Cal and SMU to the ACC. So shrapnel, you may not see it coming, and then all of a sudden it's right there in your backyard.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be on your toes. And unfortunately for the Pac-12, they were the one that was fat and happy and felt like they were untouchable. And even with the USC and UCLA moves, still felt even more that way. And I think everybody else had a little bit different, idea of the future in mind. And, their is what you saw unfold over the last year with a couple of years of the Pac-12 of just that arrogance. I think at this point that's taught everybody else a lesson. If you can't sit back if you're the ACC and be like, they're not going to be able to do any. I mean, they've given you enough warnings at this point. The ACC would be stupid not to be, on level 5 alert here. But for anybody that at any conference that might be thinking, it's no, you don't have to worry about that or this or that. No, I mean, I think everybody is, especially after this last go round of realignment, on pins and needles waiting for the next shoe to drop and preparing themselves to how to react to whatever that might be, because who's to say what that might be. But this is a big step forward in this next chapter of realignment that I guess will probably consume a lot of this offseason. And you're right. I mean, there's so many different parts of this. There's still Oregon State and Washington State that are sitting out there on an island figuring out what they're going to do. There's the Big 12, Big 10, all welcoming in new schools, ACC welcoming in new schools, and now dealing with this. I mean, you imagine if you're Cal and Stanford and SMU of like, hey, we've got our spot. And now here's Florida State saying, well, not going to be our spot for much longer if the courts pan out the way that we would like them to. So, yeah, I keep going back to spiderweb because that's just kind of how I view it. Or maybe even it's like broken glass, right? Where it's just, and that turns into the spiderweb as well, but it's just a big old pane of glass and there's one little crack and then it offshoots into various other areas. And this is what this is going to be.
You ever seen a ball hit a windshield?
Yeah.
It doesn't always leave a hole, but there's this massive spider web, and then all of a sudden, sometimes it hits it hard enough where there's just broken glass everywhere, and we've seen both examples.
Well, then over time, cold weather, it spiders out even more, and I think with every little move that's made in these realignment conversations, I mean, there are effects that have they go on down the line that affect others. So yeah, Florida State's decision is not just a Florida State decision; it's a decision that affects all the other schools that could be interested in leaving. It's a decision that affects the ACC. It's a decision that affects potentially every other conference, major conference out there, and yes, even the Big 12. So this will be fascinating to watch. But again, this is not a shock that Florida State's making noise again. And it's not a shock that they're making a move because these last few days there's been plenty of teasers, but it is important, and it is going to have major impact on college sports moving forward in college football.
I think this happens even if they had been part of the semifinals.
I do too.
This
that's
is not
the thing.
because they didn't make it. That would have just been one more shot to the ribs. But I think this was coming no matter had they been included at 13-0 or not.
It was a convenient extra reason to go ahead and do what you were planning to do already. When Drew Weatherford was out there this offseason, and he's talking about how the ACC, isn't for them anymore, and they just can't compete, and they're not going to be able to compete at a level that Florida State should be able to compete at if they're in the ACC. Like, they let it be known their unhappiness with the conference, and then this rolls around, and it wasn't the ACC that decided that Alabama was the better football team. It was the College Football Playoff Committee. But that's why I've kept saying what did the ACC do other than just not like years ago do revenue sharing so that Florida State was getting more money than everybody else, or maybe not do the I don't know what they could have done differently that would have made Florida State happy or North Carolina happier, or anybody.
They did everything they could. What was best for everybody in the conference.
My point is
that time
changes. My point is that they somehow are at fault for Florida State getting snubbed out of the playoff. You keep hearing that of that's the final straw. It's like they had no part in that, unless somehow because they're not a bigger brand, because the ACC is not a bigger brand. It's very much a reach. The reason they got left out was clear. And the conference affiliation wasn't so much anti-ACC as it was pro-SEC, in my opinion. But point is, that was just a thing to use as the final straw of all right, that's it. We just got snubbed, and it's because we're in the ACC and we're not in these two conferences. We've got to get out, and that's what it's being used as. And so that's why you're seeing that, now being the final straw that's led them to this decision that was probably coming anyways.
We will hear more that A&M has a new defensive coordinator, his story about leaving Florida the day after National Signing Day and what a parent had to say about it. Also, a little bit of an interesting story on Jeremiah Smith, who signed the receiver out of Chaminade Madonna High School in Miami, and NIL paperwork. That plus Texas yesterday evening flipped an A&M who thought or was committed to Texas A&M. G.J. Kinney, a new contract, all of that still to get to. But thanks to Dequan Finn, Baylor's newest quarterback in the quarterback room from Toledo, and also thanks to Cassum from the Tallahassee Democrat. Coming up next, Dan Wetzel. When I reached out to him earlier today about his column, he also said he knows a little bit about Dequan Finn because he's out of Detroit, so we might even ask him a question about the newest Baylor quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit early for Dan, so I might as well pass this along as well, unless
at 4, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 6 minutes. I was going to pass along in the talking about
well, we have a commercial break.
Is it 6 minutes? Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish it out. We're good now that you said it.
No, there was talk from Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball that Oregon State and Washington State are exploring their options when it comes to baseball, and there could be some smoke there with the Big 12. So crazy to imagine that you'd have 3 different conferences handling all of your sports potentially if that were to work out that way, and that's an if, but that was something that dropped just a little while ago this afternoon. Through Beaver Baseball, Washington State have 30 days to let the WCC know if they're joining for baseball. The goal and preference would be for both to jointly join a power conference such as the Big 12 versus going independent, but nothing will be sorted out until that Supreme Court case in Washington is done. And I guess somebody pointed out well, didn't that kind of wrap up last week? But he mentioned in the comment of there being some more red tape to work through, I guess, before you can clear that hurdle. But there's just another little tentacle of, this realignment and the two out west trying to sort out what their futures look like.
So they could be a part of the Pac-2, the Mountain West, the West Coast Conference, and the Big 12.
Yeah, it's very odd, but that's also sounding like that's the preference that he heard from the people that would love to go to the Big 12.
Kendall's good at what he does, as good as anybody when it comes to college baseball.
But that would be a good grouping as far as Oregon State baseball for the Big 12. But yeah, it's an interesting little arrangement there.
All right, when we come back, we will hear from Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports, his thoughts about FSU, what he's heard from within, from sources at the SEC, within the conference about FSU. And is that really, if the SEC was going to add anybody from the ACC, what would the pecking order be? And if Florida State would be a part of that at the top? That and more. This is 365 Sports. Texas Beef House in East Texas, just outside of Tyler, in White House, Texas. Texas Beef House, the Duvall family has created such an incredible business for you. One, aged Wagyu beef. We have discussed what they have many, many times, but the bottom line is aged beef. Aged beef is not typically available to the public because of the added cost and time. Texas Beef House, they age the entire beef and not just the choicest cuts of steak, resulting in improved texture and flavor for all of their beef. They've done online auctions. They've done live auctions. They're going to do more at the first of the year. They have gift boxes for you if you want, and they will ship it to you. What we've learned, Samantha Duvall, who handles a lot of the marketing, the various gift boxes from steaks, sausage, and so much more, and from Aaron Duvall, one of the owners, who, of course, has been fantastic. He and his wife have been in our studio, what this means to them, because this was not something they ever realized could get to be what it is today. A phenomenal company, incredible reputation and quality of their beef. It's aged Wagyu beef. You can order online, go to their TexasBeefHouse.com. It is worth it. Believe me, I've had their product, and many of you who watch us, you have ordered it too at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, how lovely are your SUVs. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, I love the trucks you have for me. Strong and tough with luxury, room for all my family. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, you are the dealership for me.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Nitchie Group Insurance Agency. With the Nitchie Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Nitchie Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Nitchie Group at 1-800-258-8302.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna, whirlpool, and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
If you want something to change in college athletics, just wake up the next day. And today, Florida State Board of Trustees meeting tomorrow. And I thought the best written column of anybody that I read was Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports. I'm not saying that because he's joining us. He's joining us because that's exactly the way I felt that he's been with us before on 365 Sports. Dan, thank you very much. I love so what if the proverbial dog that catches the car, now what? Or they're not interested in a team until that team becomes available. Is today's news surprising at all to you, or is this something that was just a matter of time?
I mean, Florida State's been saying for a while, quietly and certainly publicly, for over a year, that they wanted out. They were going to find a way out. They're at the ACC. The grant of rights in the ACC extends through the 2036 season. So 2037 is the first time you could get out if it just plays all its way out, which is obviously a long way off. The money in the ACC is, low 30 millions. The SEC and the Big Ten could get double that. And for Florida State, which certainly sees itself as an equal to those programs and is surrounded geographically by Florida, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, all of that, the idea of being 30 million down a year, at least, is just untenable for them, certainly unappealing. So they've been saying we're going to find a way. They get snubbed on the playoff committee, getting the playoff at 13-0. That just rallied the anger and disappointment there. The Baylor fans know about that kind of stuff. And so they're doing something about it. They're gonna sue and try to get out of the ACC grant of rights. Now, whether they can or not, I don't know. No one really knows exactly what that grant of rights says. But they haven't been able to get out. Grant of rights are hard to get out of. We will see. But if they can, that's probably the end of the ACC as we know it, because they're not the only ones that would like to try to get a better situation. So it is a seismic move. I know it doesn't seem that exciting, a board of trustee meeting in Tallahassee to say we're going to file a lawsuit, or the actual filing lawsuit. But as everybody knows, it's crazy in college sports and what can spark, the demise of the Pac-12 after 108 years, what can make Arizona a Big 12 team, Arizona Central Florida games, or whatever we got, here it is.
Dan, when it comes to the ACC part of it, you kind of mentioned that just sort of grouped all the anger back together as the season was sort of winding down. It seems like there's a lot of if we were somewhere else, what could the ACC in theory have done any differently? And, they couldn't have done anything about the playoff snub either, but it did feel like that was just a convenient final straw to use as, all right, now we're going at it after a lot of barking.
Yeah, I agree with you. First off, there's nothing they could do. The ACC and Florida State's a prominent member of the ACC, and they helped create a 4-team playoff when there were 5 power conferences. And when they did it, I think all of us sat around and did the math and said, well, wait, what happens if, and they go, oh, don't worry about it. Well, here we are. It didn't make any sense. It's 5 leagues, 4 spots. Didn't have to be a mathematician to see the problems there. They are, so, some of this is brought on themselves. They were part of the ACC that agreed to a 20-year contract with ESPN because they wanted stability. Well, stability means not enough money. So, there's a lot of things. In terms of this playoff stuff, yeah, there's nothing you can do. And that problem is solved. That's my thing about it is it stunk, but we have a solution. It's called the 12-team playoff. It's coming next year. The ACC will get an automatic bid almost assuredly every year. So whatever. I don't see this as that. That's the reason. But in Tallahassee, the belief is the committee said we're not leaving the SEC champion out. And because of that, we're leaving Florida State out. And if Georgia had defeated Alabama and been the number 1 seed, it would have been Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Texas 3 and Florida State 4. But because Alabama had to get in there as the SEC champ, Florida State got bounced. So I think that created a little more resentment and more spark.
You could always feel pretty good about yourself, and Florida State has a great history. There's no question about college football, the lineage from the Bobby Bowden years to who they are even now. But if, in fact, and I know you have great sources in the SEC and the Big Ten, if they were to tell you, here are the two teams we would want if the ACC ever became available, or we wanted to go and get somebody from the ACC, would Florida State be one of those two?
The number one choice for both leagues, if you talk to people in both leagues, is North Carolina, University of North Carolina. It's obviously not as successful in football by any means, but it's got the basketball, but it's the state school, big state, very, very popular in its state. Florida State is one school in the state of Florida. There's also pro teams in Florida. A lot of people who live in Florida didn't actually grow up in Florida. It's not quite the same. So as much as it'll bring some TV numbers, sure, everyone knows Florida State. It's not like North Carolina. North Carolina is the one they want. And the other one you hear they all talk about is Virginia for the academics, and the same thing, the state of Virginia, and get into that population and all of those things. Those are actually more appealing in theory to the SEC and certainly the Big Ten than Florida State and Clemson, which I think every college football fan would just say, well, just grab Clemson and Florida State. That'll help your league. Like, those are great football programs. Miami's now they're recruiting again. They could certainly be a great football program. That's an exciting team. Now, all of that gets said in theory, but, I had a Big Ten trustee today say, look, once they're available, all things can change. And all of a sudden a TV network says, hey, look, we'll give you this much more money, or this will be this much more appealing if you add Florida State and Clemson or Florida State and North Carolina, then anything can happen. So a little bit of it is like, in theory, you say, I'm not interested in that person. They're in a relationship, and all of a sudden the relationship ends, and you go, yeah, now I'm interested. So we'll see what plays out. But Florida State is not, when you talk to people right now, the number one choice out of that league.
The Big Ten didn't really want Oregon and Washington, right, until the Big 12 helped make that a lot easier for them. Kind of what you're saying there.
Yeah, the Big 12, all of a sudden they were available. I mean, they could have grabbed them. If you think of the Big Ten expansion, they go get USC and UCLA, and they say, okay, that's it. That's all we want out west. Then all of a sudden the Pac-12 is falling apart, and NBC, CBS, and Fox are saying, hey, take these guys. They'll help in television. They'll help with television ratings, and they get them to take a half share of revenue. Like Washington and Oregon are splitting a share of the revenue in the Big Ten. You make a deal, boom, now you got them. If you talked in theory, even last summer we were writing those stories, you talk to people in the Big Ten, they go, boy, our presidents would really love to add Cal and Stanford, the academics, the entree to San Francisco, the Silicon Valley, all the wealthy alums out there, all the smart students that would maybe go to Big Ten schools. And, in the end of the day, they didn't want them because their football teams aren't good. So there's a lot of grandstanding about what's important. At the end of the day, it's generally who's the most exciting football program is. So, we will see. But it could get really messy over the next 2 years. This is the next front of conference realignment that I know everyone's sick of.
Dan, is there any chance at all, and I know, again, I mentioned about their history, but is there any chance at all they could win this and then not have a place to go? And would that then shift from the SEC or the Big Ten? And could we see shrapnel occur that is a part of the Big 12?
Well, you could certainly go to the Big 12. They're not going to, let's not scare ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll take them in a second.
Yep.
As they should. So the Big 12 is there. They also could just reorganize the ACC. One of the problems with leagues that get too big, and the ACC was kind of your first super conference in a lot of ways. They merged the old ACC with some of the pieces of the Big East that they wanted. They tried to create this East Coast situation. Well, they may sit there and say, hey, look, we're better off as a small conference. Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, Virginia. And we don't need Boston College, and we don't need Wake Forest, and we don't need Syracuse, or whatever it goes. They may cut some of those people out. I think that's playing C or D, but you could certainly have that. You could also have the Big 12 be able to come in and say, all right, maybe we don't get Florida State and Clemson, but could we get some of these other schools that are pretty appealing? Could we get more on basketball? I know the Big 12 cares about basketball, which other colleges don't. We're talking Louisville, talking Duke, talking, Syracuse. You got some serious basketball programs and some decent other deals. So, look, these things are so crazy. You go, that doesn't make any sense. But, did any of this ever make any sense 5 years ago?
Dan, I have, and again, there was a time when Louisville, at least when the Big 12 was looking at possibly expanding, they went through that, 5 or 6 years ago, and I think they were just basically doing it to make it look like they cared. But I've been told by administrators in the Big 12 that Louisville has always still, not that they're unhappy in the ACC, but they've always kind of had interest in the Big 12. Have you heard, and I'm not saying they would leave the ACC if it was healthy and everything was fine, have you heard anything about ESPN in this 2036 grant of rights timeline, that ESPN actually, they have an opt-out and not the ACC if they wanted to use it? Why they would use it, I don't know, but they might have that coming around the corner?
I don't know if that they do or don't. I have heard that they might, but this is a good deal for the ESPN right now, and so they're getting they're getting the games they want, and they're getting a lot of really good basketball, which fills a lot of hours in the winter. It's not as profitable, but they got to put something on. But they get some good football. They're basically all SEC now, and this is a good deal for them. And the television rights markets are softening. All media is struggling in different ways. There's not this, so much of the money is going to the NFL. What can the NBA get? You're seeing the regional sports networks falling apart, all sorts of different stuff. So it's not like there's just this bottomless pool of ESPN money that they're just sitting there. They're not in 110 million homes anymore. They're trying to make ends meet. So, what they end up choosing to do would be, I would think they want to keep the ACC together as is, because they're willing to pay that $30 million.
Dan, you've heard the phrase "power two" that started to be used by media even more and more. I've noticed that, and shoot, there's a league that's leaving after it's going to be no more. There's going to be 4 at best. But you mentioned it at the top of just sick of realignment. Realignment's crazy and all of that. Are you still surprised? Even though you never say never in college sports, are you still just surprised when you sit back and look at the subject matter here of Cal and Stanford joining the ACC and these guys going over here and 18 teams in the Big Ten? Is this even above even the creative college football imagination and realism in your mind? It just feels crazy, the place we're in right now with college athletics and all this potential movement.
Yeah, look, we know, we know that, guess what? There's going to be 50 programs that are in on the money. They'll play football all over because there's too many good players and they need to play each other and stuff like that. But we know we're heading to two 2016 leagues or something, or 3 or something like that. But every time it whittles down, you just sit there and go, this is crazy. Wait, Stanford and Cal have no value. I don't know. You just sit there and go, can't you figure out a better way? Just the other day, Chip Kelly, the UCLA coach and the Oregon coach back in the day, I don't know if you guys saw the thing. He said, let's just have everybody's an independent. Let's just get 60, 65, whatever the number is of power, 4 or 5, whatever, and just share all the revenue, and then have some kind of scheduling situation where you play each other throughout the years and you protect some rivalries, and just do that. And then the group of 5 could have their group of, their pool of money. And why can't we just do that and preserve it? And you go, yeah, that makes total sense, except someone's got to give something up, or there's got to be trust and cooperation and teamwork and leadership. And there's just none of that in college sports and long-term thinking. And so that's the disappointing part, is you sit there and go, well, I don't know. There's a they're running it like a business, but it's not just a business. It's like there's an ethos to college sports that all of these teams somehow kind of matter, even if you're not a fan of them. I look at like a Washington State and Oregon. I like that knowing they're there. It's not that they're ever going to win the national title or they're, my favorite team, but we all sat there and watched, Washington State games late at night because they're fun. And it's snowing up there and they're throwing the ball 50 times. And that's just part of the fabric of the sport. And as you whittle this down, it gets away from some of that. So you just go, gosh, we might not have Duke and Carolina in the same league. Like, why would we ever do that? Like, why? There's just so many different things. You go, gosh, this doesn't make any sense. Can't somebody stop this train? It's just not going to stop. And so it's every man for himself. It's find whatever the highest peak you can and hope you survive as long as you possibly can.
I got to tell you that the line in your story today, and I've mentioned this, what if they are the proverbial dog that catches the car? Now what? Like, I tell you, it's fantastic. Have you ever written a column where you've actually just walked away from it and went, damn, that was pretty good?
That's my dad's old line. He used to always say, you're going to be the dog that caught the car. What are you going to do then? And then I'd be like, oh, that's a good point. He used to say that to us all the time. So there you go. I gave you a new line.
Yep.
Line.
I love it. Dan, thanks for your time, man. I know you're busy. We appreciate it. As I said,
Always
just wake up the next day. Something is new in college athletics. We appreciate Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, for his time today with us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, head on a swivel. Just a lot of it doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense if you're looking at it from a TV revenue standpoint or, securing your future, so to speak. But geographically, historically, all of those types of things that really should matter more than the money that you're not getting. Part of that's the thing is I'm not getting any money from the TV contract with ESPN or CBS. I'm just a college football fan, and I don't know how much of this I love or even like. Certainly is interesting to follow the OU Texas move and the USC UCLA move, and we were, heavily discussing the moves last year. But yeah, it's at a point now where I would like to fast forward to the end of it. Honestly, I would just like to know, all right, who's still standing, where are they playing, and where can I watch their games? Because that's really all I care about. And I know there's realignment junkies, and I'm one of them to an extent. But I've kind of had my fill over 2 years. It's like, all right, now it's kind of breathe. But, I mean, just gear up because it's not going anywhere. And, in fact, it's only going to get that much bigger because now you're talking about another conference that is, playing the game of will you survive or won't you? And if you've survived, what does that look like on the other side and who's a part of that? And tomorrow will be enlightening to see, what actually comes of Florida State's move legally. But yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense in some ways. And then when you just think about it from a pure money standpoint and an exposure standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. I realize we're in America and it's all about the money. But man, it's making it all just so strange and kind of messy. And I just, I don't know like where this thing goes and what it ultimately looks like, but it is gearing up to be a busy offseason and certainly a lot more changes on the horizon. And maybe we're just barreling towards the Power 2 and the whole NFL idea, which I guess when we arrive there, I'll have a better idea of how I feel about all of that. But I am somebody who did watch Pac-12 late at night and didn't have a dog in the fight and did care about a lot of other programs that were on TV. And not because I had money riding on the game or because of what conference they were in. I'm just a college football fan. And, some of this has been fun. Some of this has been sad to see. And we're about to get into probably the most chaotic period ever now. I mean, that was really all just the opening act to what is about to boil over out on the East Coast and have a massive effect on the entire landscape. So, yeah, buckle up.
I had a question in the text room, and I don't want to ask it now. We do have a part of the Devin Gardner interview coming up, the Michigan quarterback back in the day at 4:30. From Martin Moore, I've never heard of it this way. Is there a chance, because of how the transfer portal and NIL is working, especially NIL, that teams can now take players to keep them, and I'm talking about the 25 or 30 guys you sign, but is it possible now that programs will take players, walk-ons, give them NIL so they don't have to compete against them from another team.
Yeah, of course.
Where it was in the days of Bud Wilkinson and Darrell Royal, and I'm sure many others, that they would have 175 players in the program, but you could only have so many players on scholarship, but they would do that. And I think that was before the 85 scholarship limit. You could have everybody, but that kept them from playing for somebody else because they wanted to play at those particular schools, even if they never had a chance to play.
Yeah, of course. I mean, would college football coaches find a way to have an advantage? Yes. Yes, they would. Would they do anything to have an advantage? Yes. Yes, they absolutely would. Would that include fill in the blank? Yes. Yes, it would. So, yeah, no, that's a great question. But I think of Nebraska's walk-on program, and that wasn't, a bunch of guys who weren't deserving of scholarships. They got some scholarship-level players, right, that were able to be tucked away under – what was that program called?
They had a freshman team. They had a walk-on team. They had a redshirt thing.
But they were like legit scholarship guys. Had they gone somewhere else, but because they were from Nebraska, right? Like
they were from the state of Nebraska.
They were tucked away, like they were walk-ons basically, and they were like guys who probably could have gone to Oklahoma or Oklahoma
State.
Probably
not OU, but some of those.
But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like they could have gone somewhere else and played scholarship football and played, and Nebraska was able to kind of tuck them away under the guise of that. So, I mean, this is college athletics, and especially in college football, college basketball, men's basketball. I think fill in the blank, yes, there are people out there that would do whatever that blank says to get an advantage and to beat other teams for sure.
You would still want to be able to play, but if you go to a school that's your dream school, like if you're high level, you're going to go play wherever you can. But if it allows you, Garrett,
I'm just trying to think, isn't this essentially what Texas Tech did with their walk-ons getting
paying them money?
When they gave not just the 85 scholarships, and I think Baylor gives money to not just the scholarship players, but also up to a certain amount of walk-on players too.
Yeah, Texas Tech did the whole, we're paying everybody whatever it was, $25,000, and then it extended to like a specific number of walk-ons. It was like 10 or 15 walk-ons.
I think it was 30 for them.
Okay, well, 30, whatever the number was. And yes, that is absolutely what you're attempting to do there. You're not doing that out of pure generosity for the kid from Estacado to improve his life. You're doing that because that kid can play, and if you pay him $25,000, he's going to stay closer to home. And, whatever arrangement you come up with, and rather than go to, TCU or something like that potentially. Like, it's not exactly like that, but yes, that is absolutely an incentive to have more quote-unquote scholarship-level players, but not fall above the 80 or not, go above the 85 scholarship limit. So, yeah, I mean, anything that can give an advantage, again, teams are going to try and do. And I just think, though, with the transfer portal, it does make it interesting because now you see these guys who are like a hired gun because you want them, and in some cases maybe you're also trying to keep them away. But like now if you're a college player, like you could, depending on what level of a player you are, I mean, you can make tens of thousands of dollars
and never play,
bouncing around schools, maybe millions depending on who you are, and never basically see the field and play like 3 different places and, make a bunch of money. And, part of it's them wanting to keep you away, but also just the way you're able to maneuver now with freedom of player decisions. So yeah, it's a weird landscape with, I don't like always going the wild west route because I think that gets wildly overused at this point, but I don't know also that there's a better description of it because it is lawless in a lot of ways. There is just a lot of outlaw type stuff rolling around everywhere. And it's a lot of, not a lot of law and order, I guess, in the grand scheme of things.
We're not allowed to use that term guardrails because that got some people offended like we were trying to keep things capped. We're not trying to do that. We're just hoping to do what's best for the student athletes. Now they're getting paid, or are they student athletes? Getting paid, all the amenities, all of that. Now the transfer portal, so if they're unhappy, they go somewhere else. But you know what? That leads me to what we're going to talk about in the next segment, but we'll also hear from former Michigan quarterback Devin Gardner. Florida State, A&M today announced the hiring of their new defensive coordinator. Jay Bateman, he was the defensive coordinator at North Carolina at one point, and also the defensive coordinator for Billy Napier in Florida. Okay, so he leaves. Now here's the kicker. Florida yesterday, although they did have some of their class rated, just had a class sign with them. And the next day, their coordinator, who some of those players were being recruited by, announces he's leaving for A&M. Here is a note from, is it Friedman? Do you have that one? From Adam Friedman. Exchanged some text with a parent of one of the players who signed with Florida yesterday. They had no idea Jay Bateman was going to leave. News broke this morning, the day after signing day, that Bateman is leaving Florida to become the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. Now, we're going to get to Ernest Graham later on, Garrett. This is part of the deal, and this is also the argument, well, if coaches can leave anytime they want to, why shouldn't the players? And I kind of was one of those old school guys that, well, wait a minute, coaches are paid, they're professionals, that's their, and then you know what? They're right. But this is not the first time, but this is an example from the day after National Signing Day when players who signed with Florida, who thought they might be playing for Jay Bateman, the next morning they wake up and he's not there. Should they be able to renege on their signing of a scholarship or not? Are they going to be in the transfer portal? I don't know how that works, but that's also part of today's college athletics.
Yeah, and that's the part of the argument that the pro NCAA side has never had a proper response to.
Yeah.
I mean, they've never been able to. You can say whatever you want to about like all sorts of different things. Well, why don't they do this or why can't they have that? But whenever the whole, well, if a coach can leave, why can't a player leave? That never really has had a strong counter argument. And you know, going back to, I can't believe people be offended by guardrails. I mean, that's just trying to.
That was back a year and a half or so ago. Yeah.
I mean, guardrails. All that really means is just having like a set of rules, like so that you know there's not as much tampering. It's not trying to prevent movement. It's not trying to prevent payment. It's just trying to prevent tampering. It's trying to make sure that a guy is actually at a place for like, what he signed up for, as opposed to just willy-nilly being a 24/7 free agent, basically. I think that's just what a lot of fans of the sport would like to see. As exciting as the transfer portal is, you'd also love to see that guy that you signed yesterday is actually going to be there for more than 10 months maybe, or 12 months, because there's already plenty of examples where guys who signed last year are already in the portal. And I think it's not due to not lack of playing time. It's due to like, well, Georgia got in the DMs, and that's what people want guardrails from. That's the kind of thing that people want to stem off, at least from my point of view. And that's the same thing when I say like the law and order thing. I don't want policing of it all. I just don't want it to be as wild and lawless as it appears to be, where there's just no ramifications for anything. Nothing means anything. I guess that's a bit. Nothing means anything. You know what I mean? Like, the commitment doesn't really mean anything in the long run. It doesn't mean anything past a certain point. I would just like for things to still mean something for longer than 5 seconds. Does that make sense?
For both players and coaches.
Yes, for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely not like anti-player and pro-coach. Absolutely not. Like I said, the argument of, well, coaches can move, why can't players? That's the one that nobody has a proper response to. And the coaches themselves got fat and happy on big contracts, and the schools did as well on fat TV deals, and did everything in their power to not have to ever hand over any of that money until they were absolutely forced to. And now the ones who have the most are able to do that and free and clear rather than under the table and have their cake and eat it too. But yeah, I'm absolutely pro-player. I just think for everybody's sanity involved, like we have a day like yesterday where there's all these things converging, just that's some of the stuff that you can sort out that would make it just more enjoyable, I think, for everybody, or a little bit more clear-cut than just this fog that we're sort of in, where everything's being fought in court and everything's just sort of still like dirty under the table, but it's legal. So why, you know what I'm saying? So I just think that's where I come in on the whole, the cleaning up of it. But no, absolutely don't want to restrict player movement and not allow them to have the same opportunities that coaches do, because again, there's not an argument for them to not to. And if it is, well, they're employees, well, then there you go. That just feeds into why players should be employees and the next path that we may be going down here in the coming months and years as these lawsuits work their way through the courts. So yeah, it's craziness. There's no commissioner that's going to be able to roll in and fix this. A lot of this is in the hands of judges and the courts, but it's a wild time, man. When you add up all of the different things that are going on and things that we're referring to, it's just an absolutely crazy time in college sports, and who knows where it's leading. Some believe into the NFL-like system that would leave a lot of schools in the dark. Some think, all right, it'll be 64 teams and 2 conference. What? I don't know. I don't know what we're going towards, but certainly with the Florida State news, it appears that the two big dogs could be getting even bigger if Florida State gets their way, even though they're not going to say that right now, and they have to deny or not really claim to have any interest. But that Florida State case, that is the next big, bowling ball coming down the lane here, the next big domino, however you want to refer to it. That is the one that now has the next wave of changes coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, by the way, Scout guy, who's an South Carolina fan, I played SEC baseball. I honestly don't see how these coast-to-coast conferences are going to work. Ugh. It's hard enough to play a weekend series as South Carolina's in Baton Rouge, let alone Stanford. I think what we might see, and I could be just not – by the way, Mac Rhodes tomorrow will join us, Baylor Director of Athletics tomorrow, and I'll get to tomorrow's show in just a moment. That one brought up. I think we're going to see a massive adjustment in 2 or 3 years. I understand conferences might change, where we're going to see almost in a way what Chip Kelly's mentioned in one huge bubble of football teams. How many? I don't know. And everybody's going to go back to playing more of a regional conference type schedule. I think you're going to see that. I understand the television rights and all that with those who've joined the Big Ten or the SEC, et cetera, or even the Big 12. I think at some point you're going to see kind of a correcting of the market, so to speak, and everybody goes, man, this is just not – I don't care how much the money is in football. This is just is wearing everybody out.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too, is like, do you really – there are certain teams that could move the needle in basketball, like Kansas would be obviously very attractive. North Carolina, as part of the potential Big Ten or SEC move, they're mentioned, and it's always mentioned, well, their football program's not that great, but they've got this and this and this and this, and basketball, of course, as well. But I do think that's exactly what Chip Kelly was referring to, is just break off football entirely. It's its own beast because Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten in football is exciting, but do you really care about that in basketball? I mean, do you honestly?
Nope.
Do you care about Oregon, Ohio State in basketball? Like, No, of course not. I mean, I'm sure you get excited about Texas, LSU in basketball. I mean, for some matchups, it's going to be cool and you're going to like it. But see, that still makes sense geographically, though. That's not Texas playing like Ohio State in basketball. I mean, that's not going to move the needle like Texas, Ohio State in football is going to move it. And so this is all football. This is all geared towards football. This is not for the best basketball matchups, although the Big 12 could be the league that's trying to maneuver that way of like, yes, let's get Gonzaga so we have Gonzaga Baylor, Gonzaga Kansas, and for the hoops heads, that'll be great. But yeah, this is football driving the bus, and so Chip Kelly's thoughts the other day I think were spot on, and I do think that makes way more sense having it football, all to itself as opposed to UCLA softball going to Rutgers to play, because who cares, honestly, about that? But what UCLA fans would care about? Playing Arizona in softball. That means way more to them. And I don't live out there, but I'd feel pretty good that would be the case if you were to poll UCLA softball fans.
Yeah, you have some national programs that, like, for example, Texas plays Stanford in most everything.
That'll move the needle, and Texas will move the needle
and
no matter
also,
what.
at most of those schools, although they dip every once in a while, they're both really, really good. Like, for example, and so you'll have that Duke playing across country against Stanford, or Johns Hopkins in lacrosse against whoever it might be. But no, I just wonder, I'm just saying that, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't bother me. I won't lose any sleep. But at some point, the football stuff continues to grow. The money continues to get larger, and the bubble might even change a little bit, as we've heard about the super conferences, or maybe it's 60 or 58 or 64 or 40. But I do think at some point the other sports are going to realize that, yeah, you could be a part of the ACC if you're whoever, Cal, Stanford, but you're also going to need to play maybe the number of conference games has to decrease, and you end up playing more because most of those sports are anyway invitations into tournaments. Yes, conference champions in basketball, softball, baseball, but most of that is going to be something you're invited anyway because there's only so many different conferences. We need to take a break. Appreciate a lot of you in the chat. Joe Zay, Big Ten would take FSU and Miami if Miami made themselves available. I think you might want to tap the brakes on that. I don't think that's what they would do first. That doesn't anything out of disrespect to both of those schools, but I don't think that's what the Big Ten would do if, in fact, anybody from the ACC became available first.
To clarify what you're saying here is it's not that they would never have any interest. It's that if you were to say, hey, Big Ten, all bets are off, no lawsuits, you can go make your move right now. What do you want? I think what you're saying is Miami wouldn't be like their top two choices, right?
No.
That's what you're saying?
I think there would be a lot of interest,
Miami,
but it wouldn't be one and two if they could make those first two choices.
So if you say, hey, you got the top 2 draft picks to go draft anybody out of the ACC, who do you want? I don't know that Miami would be number 1 or number 2, but this is also not that clear cut. This is also what happened over here that caused this to happen, that caused that to happen, that caused Miami to become available in this month as opposed to 6 months ago. And then, where are we there? And that's what's so fascinating and interesting for realignment junkies.
Right.
But also unpredictable is that one move leads to another, and there is that domino effect. So, yeah, right out of the gates, Big Ten, here's your top 2 draft picks. They're not going to go grab the Canes right away, but could that be an option that they would be interested in because this team went here and this team joined up and you could have these 4 all together for – yes, absolutely. So, yeah, if you're a Miami fan, you're very interested in what's going on because you are in that upper group still. You're just maybe not 1 or 2, but you are in that upper group of teams that would be, you would think, of interest for those other leagues for certain. And FSU, obviously, they are as well. But, yeah, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina. You mentioned or you hear about Virginia as well. But yeah, Miami would be in the mix, to be sure.
They would be. And so would NC State, Louisville, among others, too. It's depending on what conference is looking to add somebody. All right, coming up next. We had, if you didn't hear, Dequan Finn, who's coming to Baylor, the Toledo quarterback. I had the opportunity to get to know Devin Gardner, former Michigan quarterback. You may not remember him. He was a starter. He wore number 98 as a quarterback. He is Dequan Finn's mentor. I spoke with him a little bit about his process and what he knows about Dequan. We'll have that coming up. Bob Thompson, can't wait to get to him. I reached out to him this morning after the SU story hit. He goes, let me guess, grant of rights information. Yep, Bob Thompson today at 5, and then also Paul's Top 5 just around the corner. He's not here today or tomorrow. And then we're off all of next week on vacation. And speaking of tomorrow, we will be live tomorrow, 8:30 tomorrow morning until 11:30 tomorrow morning Central Time, live. We will replay the show in the afternoon slot, but we will be live tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 11:30 with this show, and then have that on the replay at around 2 o'clock, 2:30 or 3 tomorrow afternoon, just to give you that information. So if you get an alert or not, if you're subscribed or not, or just set your alarms, we appreciate that. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer still in pipe. 1943, they opened their doors. And then a year ago, they opened up doors to a brand new facility on Loop 340 and Highway 6 east of 35 in Waco. Bigger, better, faster, and stronger. And what they were doing was really, really good because they've been in business since 1943. So think about that. 1943, and here they are still today, and as good, if not better, than ever before. Where a handshake makes a difference. Some say that. They mean it. They want the handshake. Their customers, generationals of one family to the next, because people keep coming back. They've outfought and they've also sustained their business throughout the big, huge companies that come into a city and eat away at the local companies, but they survive. And now, bigger, better, faster, and stronger. Pioneer still in pipe. Loop 340 and also Highway 6 east of 35, pioneerboys.com.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgin Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgin Ford. Bird Colgin Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC, FDIC and equal housing lender.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. GXG works with partners and donors to offer a suite of options to student athletes, including connections with local businesses and nonprofits, entrepreneurial development, and other avenues to broaden the NIL profile of student athletes. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Donors may wish to support the general fund or direct funds to specific sports. Oversight of the NIL Fund is managed by the Board of Directors of Startup Waco and the Baylor NIL Advisory Council. GXG is a program of Startup Waco, a tax-exempt organization under Internal Revenue Code Section 501c3. Donors should consult their tax advisors regarding the tax deductibility of donations to GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
Want to again remind you that tomorrow we will be live from 8:30 to 11:30, and the show will then be put back on the air during our normal time in the afternoon. And tomorrow will include Brett McMurphy. Tomorrow, Zach Barnett has just sent me a text. We're going to have him on tomorrow. He's not available because of car trouble. Also tomorrow, we will have Mac Rhodes, Baylor's Director of Athletics, and Mickey Spagnola on the NFL weekend. He'll join us too. So that's tomorrow, 8:30 to 11:30 here on 365 Sports. So a couple of other stories. G.J. Kinney at Texas State opened the year in Waco, beat Baylor, and started what was the 3-9. He has a new contract. Pete Thamel reporting that. G.J. Kinney with a new deal. Good for him. Texas State trying to keep him around as long as they can. He and Jeff Traylor also will, next time around when there's other head coaching jobs open, will be hot commodities in Texas State trying to wrap him up.
Yeah, I got 2 thoughts on that. One, Texas State, I feel for the reporters down in San Marcos. You got bit by the Thamel bug like everybody else seems to these days. There are a lot of schools that love the the impressions that, and this is not a knock on Pete at all, to be very clear, but there is, as we well know, a push by some people at times that, like, we need the biggest announcement ever rather than like the guy at the newspaper getting to break it. And so that's interesting, but that's also, am I wrong, entirely unnecessary? Like, did he really need a contract redo after 1 year?
But this is, okay, I'm happy as hell for GJ.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is the trend. And I'm sure that he's going to have a fantastic career in Texas State next year will be better. But at the same time, this is what it seemed like, because most of the coaching jobs are filled. So you're almost bidding against yourself, and yet UTSA with Traylor, G.J. Kinney, Texas State, among others, they have to kind of deal with this, even though the inevitable will probably happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they get a couple extra $100,000 for the inevitable buyout versus what they would have gotten without that contract extension. But I do think that is where teams find themselves in a pickle sometimes, is like, he had some success. Let's sign him to a longer, more lucrative deal. And it's like, it's been 1 year. I mean, it's been... They were good, but it's like they were, running through the conference and winning the championship there at the end. But no, that's great for him. I'm gonna be that way with every story where a first-year head coach is already getting a reworked contract. I just think that that's a little abrupt, but that's great for GJ. I think that just shows that they feel like they have their guy, but they are also well aware of the fact that he's so much of a guy that there are going to be people beating down the door sooner rather than later. So I understand the idea there. And good for them and whatever that amounts to when somebody does, in fact, come calling, and excited to see what he can do in year 2, because he did seem to light a little bit of a spark down there in San Marcos. So
a couple other stories to get to, and then Devin Gardner. Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 player in the country, the wide receiver from Chaminade, Madonna. Saw them play back in 2005 against what is now Legacy High School in Tyler. He signed with Ohio State. There was a kind of a delay. His NIL rep wanted to make sure that everything that needed to go through Ohio State's collective had been signed. That was the delay. And for Manny, who has joined us many times before, theathletic.com, and then another NIL attorney or collective saying more people need to do this because there is paperwork. And that's what ties up someone from being available even 4 days after they committed, or whoever it might be.
Well, I mean, you should just do that business-wise anyways. I mean, that's where you probably have some people fall into these, wrong situations or false promises. Jaden Rashada comes to mind. Should have had it all in writing, I suppose. And I don't know how all that eventually worked itself out, other than he obviously left. But, I mean, that's smart on his part. He's got some good advice. I don't know if he's already one of those players who has an agent that's an unofficial agent or whatever. But whoever was in his ear on making sure all that's secured did him a solid there, and that's, good that he was able to have the wherewithal or the information to make that decision as opposed to just rushing into something. So, yeah, smart on his part, and that's probably a good example for a lot of other recruits that are of his stature or a little bit lesser stature to be mindful of as well. So, yeah, and good for Ohio State. Hey, congrats to Ohio State, the number 1 overall player in the entire country and a tremendous 5-star wide receiver. Not that you're strangers to, big-time wide receivers. He'll be the next in line of great Buckeyes wideouts, I'm sure. And what a hell of a player and a smart businessman it appears to be as well.
Garrett, before we get to Devin Gardner, do you have the Chris Vanini tweet on the Group of 5 recruiting classes? Here are, according to Chris Vanini, looking at all the stats and data, the top 10 Group of 5 recruiting classes per 247's rankings. USF, Tulsa, Toledo, East Carolina, Colorado State, then UNLV, Memphis, North Texas, good for them, San Diego State, and Southern Miss. Alex Golish continues, and he already had and was doing, remember, they played Alabama very well in the heavy pouring down rain early in the game. I think that Milroe was benched. Those are the top 10 Group of 5 recruiting classes per 247 Sports. There you go.
Yeah, good for them. Don't really know too much about those individual classes or their programs and where they find themselves overall, but that's great for USF and Tulsa. They coming off of a pretty rocky little stretch, so that's great for them. Dequan Finn, obviously, just left Toledo to come down here, but Toledo's still doing well, appears in recruiting, and that's good look at a lot of schools that we may not always have a microscope on. So, yeah.
All right, so earlier today I spoke to former Michigan quarterback Devin Gardner. He is training with Raquan Finn, the new commitment quarterback out of Toledo.
Dequan.
What did I say, Raquan?
Dequan.
Yeah, Dequan Finn out of Toledo, headed to Baylor. We had Dequan on earlier today, and I had a chance to ask Devin a little bit more about Dequan Finn and Baylor and some of the homework that he did before Dequan Finn committed to Dave Aranda. Devin, we've obviously seen what Dequan has done, how he's improved as a football player, and coming from Detroit, Michigan, and now he's going to be in Waco, Texas, and what he did at Toledo and won a championship, MVP, all that. How has he grown up in your eyes as a person over the years, from not playing immediately in college to now being a coveted transfer portal quarterback?
I'm personally super proud of what he's been able to do, because a lot of people, when you go through kind of those things of not being the guy and not getting the notoriety that you may think you deserve because of how hard you work, a lot of people can't come back from that, and they kind of fall by the wayside. They say maybe it doesn't work. Maybe all this hard work is not working. But he's a guy that continued to work, and that just shows a different kind of intestinal fortitude that a lot of people don't have. So his emotional growth as far as being a leader, being a quarterback, being a guy in the community, I mean, he is worlds beyond what he was as a 15, 16-year-old. And he's kind of aware of his surroundings in a way that helps. He can help himself, but also others can lean on him to help with their journey of navigating through, maybe I'm not playing as much, or maybe the team, maybe the coach doesn't like me, right? That's what kids love to say. The coach doesn't like me. And he went through that kind of thing. And so now he can talk to a young guy like, no. We got to look in the mirror, right? What are we doing, right? What are you doing that has put you in this position? And how do you pull yourself out? Because he's done it, and he had experience in Toledo where he was able to do that. So I think that he's an asset, obviously, on the field, but emotionally for young guys, and Baylor had a young team a year ago, will still be relatively young this next coming year. He can be a service for that, and it'll help the improvement of those young guys and get them on the field and playing well.
Devin, he's moving to Baylor. They had a struggle, no question, offensively, defensively, across the board. When he entered the portal, obviously there was a lot of people he could have gone. People wanted him. I mean, all over the country. Why do you think Baylor ended up with Dequan Finn?
I think the style of offense fits him perfectly, but the most important thing, I think, in all of this is Dave Aranda and the kind of person he is. He's almost, I kind of described it to Dequan that in coaches' calls, it's kind of like speaking with Gandhi. It's like a guy who is so emotionally aware, emotionally intact. And the real cool thing is he's not going to sacrifice his culture with good guys just to get the best of the best of the best player, if that makes sense, right? He holds his culture and what they've been able to do at Baylor. Obviously, didn't have the season they won to a year ago with a young team, but what he's been able to do, I've been very impressed with. And him emotionally, I think is going to help Dequan so much and give him the freedom to kind of be himself and really lead that football team.
See, that's interesting because obviously the way 2022 ended, Baylor did not play well at the end and basically was just awful in a bowl game against Air Force. And then last year, wow, I mean, from the beginning. So there were and are, and the fan base, media, you can understand that. You played the game. We're like, man, there's going to be a coaching change. And there's going to be, like, he had the best team ever. Did it? Were those what things he did and his staff, or was that because of the players were already there from the Matt Rule staff? So how much did Devin bring that up to you? And even with what the wins and loss record is or has been, that really was not much of an issue?
Well, so the thing is, for me, I kind of got a unique perspective getting a chance to see them and study the film, and they aren't far off. And I know fans, they look at the record and what have you, and they're like, man, no, we're terrible. Everybody needs to go, fire everybody. Like, people used to say, Kobe Bryant would say, cut everybody.
Yep.
Right? And let's just restart. And from my perspective, studying the film, I think that they are not that far off. I think that a few balls bounce this way or that way. And I think that the most impressive thing about that Baylor team last year that did not play well is the fact that in every single game, you didn't see players quitting and not playing with great intensity and giving it everything you got, man. I'm just telling you, when you don't win football games and all the noise outside, it is hard to stay focused on the main thing. And somehow, some way, Orlando was able to keep those guys united and playing hard. And I don't know if he's just a great salesman or what have you, but that's something that's going to be super beneficial for this team moving forward because they've seen the other side. They've seen all the bad things people are talking about them, and they are going to be able to use that as a rallying cry and adding a piece like Dequan Finn, and obviously they're going to add a few more other pieces. I think it's going to be a good season for Baylor football.
Devin, when you look at Jake Spavital, he was at Cal. He's been at Texas State. He, as a head coach, didn't do all that well, but he's been at A&M and West Virginia, and you name it, and he runs that offense, and they have kind of had that more, well, it's been that wide zone that was great in 21, but not the last couple of years. Have you watched what he's done, too, and have you spoken with him, or has Dequan spoken to Jake Spavital much? I'm sure he has.
Yeah, he spoke with them a lot, and they're very excited. I actually had the perspective of calling the game with Texas State when he was at Texas State, right?
Okay.
So I got a chance to see the way their offense plays, and he did it without a dynamic running quarterback, right? And so when you add the kind of passing game that he can bring with a guy with legs and ability, it's a scary sight, right? And that's why I think that a lot of fans are going to be excited with Baylor football because of those two new additions with the coordinator and the quarterback.
Devin, final thing about Dequan. Detroit, Michigan, Toledo. The Mud Hens, by the way, the old series of MASH with Jamie Farr. But in Waco, Texas, Waco has blossomed quite a bit in recent years. The economy, tourism has exploded. Baylor, obviously, with the success they've had the last 10, 12 years in football, despite some ups and downs, that he's going to be coming to Waco, Texas. Your thoughts about what Baylor fans are about to experience with Dequan Finn?
They're going to have some fun watching football. I can tell you that. Like we've talked about already,
yep.
He's a dynamic runner, and I think they're getting the best version of Dequan Finn. You know, I had to deal with the one that wouldn't speak up and the one that he kind of was almost like, wait, what's wrong with you? Is something wrong with you? No, it's nothing wrong with him. He's just not the kind of open-up person, you know? And he's developed into that and a great leader. And so they didn't have to deal with all that stuff. They'll get a chance to just see the fun, Dequan Finn that loves football, loves his teammates. And I'm just telling you, it's going to be exciting to watch. And I can't wait to see the show.
That's Devin Gardner, former Michigan quarterback who mentors Dequan Finn. And coming up next, former Fox Sports executive Bob Thompson. It's been a while. Many times we went to him because of Patrick Crakes, Jim Williams, because of all the realignment, and now the FSU story today. What are his thoughts about what he saw, the grant of rights, and more? And this is 365 Sports. We appreciate your time. An hour to go.
As a family dealership, Christmas is a very special time at Richard Carr Motors. Time with family and friends is precious, and they know getting to your family safely is a priority. So whether you need a new SUV to travel with your family or service on your existing car or truck, Richard Carr is here to give you the best deals and the best service during the holidays and all year long. And right now they've got the power and strength and a stunning interior when it comes to the GMC Sierra, a truck that has it all, and they have dozens in stock ready to go right now over at Richard Carr. Save thousands in holiday savings on cars and trucks. Qualified buyers, for example, can save $8,000 on a GMC Sierra twin-turbo elevation model, plus military and first responders can save an additional $500. Restrictions do apply, so you can see dealer for details or contact them over the phone or contact them through their website, richardcarr.com. But there you go, the GMC Sierras right now, thousands in offerings that you can save on those terrific trucks. But also, if you're not looking to necessarily go brand new, they've got a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks available right now, as well as they trade for the best. Over 90 used cars and trucks to choose from, all inspected with a 172-point inspection and the Richard Carr seal of approval. Plus, the financing goal at Richard Carr is always 100% credit approval, as they say yes when others say no. So check out the dealership that's been around for 24 years in Central Texas and built a reputation during that time as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com in White House, Texas, just outside of Tyler in East Texas. Aged Wagyu beef and so much more you have on your ranch. And what is next?
We are planning another auction January 30th. This auction will be an in-person, online, also a live auction like we did the first time. You come out to the ranch, dinner is going to be provided. It'll be a variety of steaks, hamburger, sausage, tri-tip, brisket, roast, all of the different Wagyu cuts. It's going to be on a Tuesday. It's on January 30th, and it'll kind of be your get ready for Valentine's dinner auction.
We, of course, have a great relationship, partnership with what you do. How has the reaction been as your name and what you guys do at TexasBeefHouse.com grown?
It has grown a lot over this last year. I kind of made a joke at the beginning of 2023 and told my husband, 2023 is going to be our year. I don't know what we're going to do, but something with 2023, it's going to be our year. And we started our auction. So many things have changed for us this year, which has been for the better. So we just want to tell all of our customers, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you so much for your continued support in the year of 2023, and we hope that you return to us in 2024.
And they will. Repeat customers, because the product is amazing. Aged Wagyu beef, TexasBeefHouse.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
So I thought this was one of the better tweets from all the FSU stuff earlier today from Bob Thompson, who's about to join us. Who thought you would need a law degree to follow college sports? NIL, realignment, employee law, and transfers. Have your kids become college sports lawyers. It's kind of what yesterday, a couple of days ago, that Matt Brown said about covering collegiate athletics. Bob Thompson, rock star that we have on Realignment and more, joins us on 365 Sports. Well, Bob, here we maybe go again.
Yeah, so it kind of seems that way. Good afternoon, guys.
You too.
Glad to be back with you. I hope that National Signing Day and the transfer portal granted all your wishes.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that it's over, yeah, or at least some of it is, yeah.
Yeah. So here we are again, talking the infamous grant of rights agreement. It appears certainly that the CFP snub might have been the straw that broke the camel's back for FSU, and it certainly sounds like they're going to talk about challenging it.
So, Bob, tomorrow, what importance or what do you take away? I mean, there's a lot of these reports floating around. They're going to challenge it, but what does that mean in the big picture? What is your reaction to that move by Florida State?
Well, I think they've got to figure out if they're going to challenge it to try and actually have it termed unenforceable, or if they're going to challenge it under the terms, under the expectation that they want to negotiate an exit. Those are probably the two things that could happen, or the two approaches that they could take. I'd be surprised if they went for some sort of conference dissolution or, anything along those lines. But it certainly can become a method to negotiate an early exit, and then it just becomes, about the money. And the other thing that I'm interested to see is how everybody reacts. The TV folks, the other conferences, they still have to be, they got to land somewhere unless they're going to go independent. How the ACC reacts, how the other schools in the ACC react. I think a lot of that's going to be very telling. A lot of, if these agreements are deemed unenforceable, they're all the same. I mean, it's amazing how close each of these grant of rights agreements read. I mean, it's like somebody copied them and just changed the name of the conference. Mm-hmm. They're very short. They're not real specific. So there's a ton of room for interpretation. And, different ways that they can be looked at, glass half full, glass half empty. And so I think the reaction of the other element, the other parties involved in these grant of rights agreements, regardless of the conference, is going to be really interesting to see.
If someone eventually breaks one, and Texas OU, of course, they made the announcement, or that came out, a couple of summers ago, and eventually they negotiated what they did with your mark in the Big 12. But let's say somebody actually wins this. Is everybody else around the country going to go, why the hell didn't we do that earlier?
Well, there'll probably be some people who will be second-guessing some decisions they made. But no one's really tried to skate this early. I mean, the grant of rights didn't exist until some, schools got plucked. ACC got victimized by the Big Ten with Maryland and some of those type of moves. And the broadcast guys decided they needed some protection. And while the broadcast folks aren't a party to these agreements, their television agreements are specifically mentioned in the body of the agreements. And it gives the TV guys a comfort level that they're going to get the games that they bargained for. And then you get to the contracts and the compilation, what the composition of the conference is very specifically laid out. And there's clauses that are put into effect depending on people, people might come into the conference and people might leave the conference. And there's clauses that cover those things. But to have the whole grant of rights blown up is, that would be serious problem.
Bob, why would ESPN, from your estimation, I know this story, Florida State's been talked about for probably going on about a year now, but it's all, seemingly starting to happen now. But why would ESPN, who has the ACC already under their umbrella, why would they be willing to help facilitate or encourage a move in any way, where you see a dissolution of the ACC or a Florida State moving to the SEC? Because that's one of the parts here that you see people bring up, well, ESPN would want to do this. Where would you see that angle sort of coming from and how that would make sense on their end?
Well, the first angle is they don't want them in the Big Ten or Fox.
There you go, yeah.
That's number one. And I think certainly, if they went to the SEC, certainly ESPN has a continuing relationship with the SEC. Now they'd be coming in at twice as much money though. And that's no good for ESPN. Mm-hmm. And if they end up picking up a couple others, you're going from 30 to 70 million per school for everybody who comes into the SEC. So, and I think the ACC blowing up or imploding would not be good for ESPN because they have the ACC network, which, makes them some money. And they need the content. They've got 4 channels, whatever they're running. They're going to have a full-time, they got ESPN Plus, and they're going to have a direct-to-consumer version of ESPN. So, they live on events. And to have the conferences kind of implode would not be helpful for them. But clearly, they want to keep FSU under their umbrella, regardless of what conference it is in.
Bob, I was told it doesn't mean it's true, and I would mention that Florida State was going to start barking again before the end of the year, and I had somebody within college athletics tell me that. But they also mentioned to me, and I can't imagine this, but have you ever heard of, for example, the grant of rights, the ACC and its ESPN, not Florida State and ESPN, but that ESPN might have a kick-in clause or opt-out clause in the next 2 to 5 years, and it's their opt-out and not the ACC's opt-out. Let's say they do. And if one, have you ever heard of that? And number two, why would they do that even if they had that opportunity?
I have never heard of that in any collegiate deals. There's other deals that have walkaways. For example, is the Apple deal with the MLS. They can walk after a couple of years if they're not happy. So, but I have not heard that. I don't know why. The new ACC deal that they're working under now that extended through 2036. That was done around 2017 for the sole purpose of launching the network. The ACC network, and ESPN wanted to know that if they were going to launch that network and go through all that expense and cost, that they were going to have that for a long period of time, and that's hence the deal goes through 2036 so that they can recoup that investment. So I have not heard or seen a college deal that had gave a TV guy the right to unilaterally walk after some period of time.
So we have a chat that goes on to the side of the show, and a lot of times it's about what we're talking about or the topics of the day, or sometimes just back and forth on other stories. So the SEC, when they added Texas and Oklahoma, you remember the reaction by A&M was, what the you-know-what? South Carolina and Florida are in the SEC. You would think they would not want Clemson or Florida State in the SEC. But it, I think, also has to be a unanimous vote. If everybody in the higher levels of the SEC wants them, would they not, like it was going to happen no matter what, like with Texas and Oklahoma? And I don't know if the OU Texas brand, we're not Florida State Clemson's big, but it's not Oklahoma Texas. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the conferences are usually pretty good about making every vote seem as though it was unanimous. The one that kind of ran afoul of that was the whole ACC expansion, where there was, several schools, Florida State, Clemson among them, who voted against the expansion, the addition of SMU and Cal and Stanford. But I mean, I can understand why Florida and South Carolina wouldn't be thrilled with it. I think from the conference standpoint, it probably. It doesn't help the SEC network a ton because they've already got clearance in all the in Florida through the Florida, University of Florida and the Gamecocks in South Carolina. So it would actually make better sense for the Big Ten, who doesn't have any distribution of the Big Ten network in Florida, or not significant in Florida or South Carolina. So you can see how the different pieces that come into play here. I don't know if anyone in the SEC, say it gets to that far, and if there's going to be a majority, well, I don't know what the majority requirement is on a vote for expansion, but it certainly would come out to the press as though it was unanimous and everybody's happy, even though there might be some folks who weren't too thrilled with the idea.
During your time negotiating these deals and watching college football and these networks and grant of rights, et cetera, if you were the Big Ten, or based on your knowledge, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, Clemson, looking at it from the Big Ten's perspective, you just mentioned why that territorial-wise would be good. Which of them do you think the Big Ten would rather have if they could pick two of those four?
I've said for quite a while that North Carolina and Virginia fit the Big Ten model. And it would provide them with, additional distribution for the Big Ten network. I think the Big Ten feels that they can recruit pretty well down in Florida, and that they don't need to have a school there necessarily. So I just think the makeup of Virginia and UNC just fits the culture of the Big Ten more easily than Clemson and FSU does. I think they're all great universities, and I think they're all going to be, wherever they end up, or even if they stay where they're at, they're going to be great partners. But I just think from the Big Ten standpoint, UNC and Virginia would probably be my top choices.
Bob, does it seem inevitable that we're headed, and maybe you already felt this way before, but especially now of the Super 2, as the Power 2, as it's been referred to now for the past couple years, really ever since the Oklahoma and Texas moves, but is this about what you foresaw, or is this maybe even a little bit quicker than you expected? What do you just kind of see amongst the landscape and where we're heading at the moment?
Right. I think, I expected this to happen, but I expected it to happen. I mean, I expect this kind of the super conference to come about in 2030, 2031, around the time where there's a number of TV rights deals all expiring at the same time. So you have some, you're not walking away, or you're not having to cover deals that have 5 years to run on. I mean, the new Big 12 deal hasn't even started yet. So it's got another year before it even starts. So I think that in 2030, 2031, something like that, you could have some movement. And that's what I expected. And here's the problem. You've gone through realignment that made conferences grow. Well, now what you have to do is go through another round that makes the matchups better. Because if you want TV to pay more, you're going to have better matchups. And you guys saw it this year. There were certain weeks where there wasn't great games. Mm-hmm. There wasn't great games that you would have if you were playing 10 conference games and you were in a conference that had the top 42 brands. You just didn't see that. And so the natural progression is to some sort of a super conference that goes above and beyond what currently exists. And I think that, what Chip Kelly's been talking about has some serious merit to it, in that everything, their conferences still exist, and certain members of the conference don't play in that top division, but all the other sports, go back to kind of the regionality that they used to. And, or maybe it's done with football and basketball and everything else stays the way it is. But I think it's really the only conceivable next step is to create something that provides constantly good matchups, and that you can run an NFL TV model against, and you have a Saturday ticket instead of a Sunday ticket. And every game is always produced, and every game's out there, and you've got a game from noon till 10:30 Eastern every Saturday. And there's Friday night games, and there are games everywhere, and the games are better. And that's the next kind of key, is how do you avoid the kind of the bad matchups and the slaughter games that you just don't want to have on TV, because there's so many out there, people just change something up. Like
Rutgers against Oregon, with all due respect to Rutgers, or games like that are kind of hard to comprehend anyway?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And, every conference has some schools that, they're just not necessarily cut out to be football powers. And that's fine. And not everybody has to compete at that level. But for years, they've kind of just ridden along. And you're going to end up with one of two things. You see like what's happening in the ACC, where you have them looking to try and get kind of unequal revenue sharing. They're asking, we want a higher percentage, FSU said that, in the ACC, because we're bringing the eyeballs and we're bringing the money. Why should Georgia Tech, get paid the same amount as we do? Now, then that creates, that creates a whole different level of issues, because then you've got ADs politicking TV to be carried, because the more games you get carried, you get a higher percentage of the revenues. And that they used to do that in the Pac-12, and it was a disaster. So the only way is to kind of get into a conference with like-minded programs and programs that have the same appeal that all the major brands do, and then pay them certain level. And then everybody else plays at, a division slightly lower, but it'll still have value. And mean, it's like people go to Division II games and all the different playoff games that the smaller colleges have. People still show up, and people will still show up. It's not the end for college football if you're not in a Power 5 conference.
Do you miss right now? Would you love? I started that wrong. Are you glad you're not in the business right now, or would this be something that you couldn't wait to be a part of?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's bad timing, right before Christmas.
Right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Probably going to ruin a bunch of people's holidays, would be my guess. But this is what it's part of the fun of the business, and this is the if you're in the TV business, it's kind of you live for these moments because you're sitting here thinking, okay, what should it be? What do we want it to be? And what's the best way to get there? And that's the tough part because this is people's lives involved in this stuff, and I'm sure that the conference and everybody at FSU and everyone in the TV world has a lot of thinking that's going to be done over the next few weeks, depending on what the Board of Trustees ultimately decides to do tomorrow.
We talked to you a lot, obviously, last year about the Pac-12, and we know how all of that ended, and there's still, things being sorted out with Oregon State and Washington State. I mean, they're looking as of today with the most recent report about, being in 3 different conferences all at the same time for their various sports. But, Bob, I see a lot of mention when it comes to, well, they should be in the Big 12 or the Big 12 should want them or the ACC. And, in particular with the Big 12, they could have the network. Is there a network to even be had at this point? How would that even work? I just see that mentioned often, and it confuses me a little bit.
The network is for all intents and purposes going to be done here at the end of the school year. The agreements with the distributors all expire with the TV rights deal at the end of the spring championship season. So. And my understanding is that they're nosing around about anybody interested in buying some equipment. Okay. So it's going to go away, and I can't imagine that the network will live on. Now, certainly some of the assets of the network that reside in the schools will probably be available, and what OSU and WSU have, I'm sure they'll keep, and so that would help them produce certain events. I think what they've put together as far as the 3 conferences is the best opportunity for them while they kind of sort through what's left of the Pac-12 and figure out what the assets are and what the liabilities are, because there's significant liabilities floating around with the different NIL lawsuits and employee lawsuits, things like that have to be dealt with, and you can't take all the assets without worrying about what the liabilities are going to be. But I think for them, they're going to be all right, especially if there's another round. And this FSU thing could trigger another round. And so for them to stay somewhat flexible and vigilant, I think would be very prudent for OSU and WSU because, there may be a spot for them sooner rather than later, depending on what happens with the ACC.
Last question, and I get confused sometimes. Diamond Sports Group, Bally Sports. I saw a note the other day that they're going to pay like 11 teams in baseball, but not an entire, amount of money that they owe the Rangers, the world champion Rangers. What's going on there since the last time we spoke with you? It's been a couple of months. Is that kind of going as you thought, with this being a mess on who gets a regional network and who doesn't, who gets paid, who doesn't?
Well, it seems to be coming to a conclusion. I think that the NHL and the NBA have agreed to a deal through this season, and for probably getting paid a little bit less than what the contractual obligations are. And then at the end of the year, those rights would revert from Diamond or Bally's, whatever you want to call it, back to the leagues, and the leagues would figure out what to do with them. This baseball, they're working on a deal with them as well. They're not sure on the number of baseball teams at this point, but for the NBA and NHL, it seems to be set. And it appears as though what Diamond's probably doing is they give all the rights back. They're getting out from under some contracts that probably have a number of years to run. And then my expectation is they'll go back in and bid on the ones that they want. You know, the larger markets that they think could continue to provide the good possibility of success in the future. So I think some teams would be on the outside, you know, looking in, but there would certainly be some of the teams that would, you know, end up with some reconstituted, you know, regional network for their games. But I can't. It's hard to say right now just exactly who that would be. But you got to get through this year, and I think if they can agree with the three leagues to not have any disruption for this season and pay some guaranteed percentage of the total rights due, that's the best outcome for everybody. Because, you know, just walking away from deals, that's no good, because then you've got teams that have serious financial problems.
Last time, or I guess, you know, when we were talking to you, I guess pretty regularly, Bob, for a while there, I mean, sports rights fees left and right, big money, streamers gobbling up everything left and right. And there's a lot that's changed in the TV landscape since then. A lot of mergers, a lot of talked about mergers, a lot of money drying up. And towards the tail end, when we were talking about the pack, you were mentioning, like, hey, like there's the NBA coming up, there's the UFC coming up. Like, there's only so much money to go around, and we know how that ultimately worked. But just how drastically different is the big bonanza of sports rights fees and what's being paid and the money going around right now versus maybe what we saw even just a year ago?
Yeah, it's changed. I mean, you could sort of see the handwriting on the wall with all the cord cutting, and that's continued. And there's a lot of people who believe it'll kind of settle down around 45, 50 million homes. And that's also probably about the time that ESPN goes to market with a direct-to-consumer product. But there's been a lot of kind of reassessment as it relates to sports rights. And a couple of things. You're seeing the premium properties are still getting decent increases. The other, maybe the next level down is not getting, quite the percentage increases that they would have gotten in the past. I think the NBA, it's the next one coming up. NASCAR just got done. They got a decent increase. Obviously, the NFL was done not too long ago, and they got a great increase. Had very good timing because kind of before everything hit the fan, they were able to get their deal done. So then you got NHL coming up pretty soon in a couple of years, and then CFP. That's the big one that's hanging out there right now. UFC hanging out there right now. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the makeup of the deals are. I really think where in the past you used to have some level of exclusivity, I think you're going to find that games are on multiple places because you don't want maybe you don't want as many games because you don't want to pay that much. So you buy a partial package, and then maybe you share that another package with somebody else. And for instance, you look at the NASCAR, you've got the CW in it. You've got, there's like 4 people in it. You can see Amazon might be in it. Help me out here. Fox and NBC are all, 4 different outlets, for one property. And, you have a certain period that's yours exclusively, but someone else carries a different part of the season. So you're going to see more of that. I think every deal is going to have a streaming element, and we're pretty much seeing that already. You need to have, as I kind of said all along, you need to dip your toe in it. I don't think you go 100% at this point. You look at the ratings on broadcast and cable, the ratings are still great. I mean, even though the number of subscribers has dropped like crazy, the ratings are still staying high, which tells you that, most sports fans haven't dropped the bundle and are continuing to subscribe to either a satellite product or an internet product or a, linear cable type product that provides some bundled package of services, because that's where all the sports are still. I mean, every once in a while you're going to get a game that, like last week where we have Arizona and Purdue on Peacock.
Yep.
Oh boy, here in Arizona, you'd have thought that was the end of the world. It was a great game too, but you're going to have that, and games are going to bleed over, and that's what they have to do because they've got to grow those businesses. Because Wall Street, it was all about subscribers for those streaming services. Well, now it's about when you're going to quit losing so much money, and so they're trying to make that transition, which is tough. I mean, it's really you thought it was bad going from over the air to cable, going from over the air and cable to streaming. The financial implications are huge, and they've got to kind of get those businesses to a point where they're not bleeding quite the level that they have been.
All right, I know you need to go practice your swing. You'll be proud of me. I'm not technologically very good, but I even learned how to use YouTube TV, Bob. It's I needed help to get it set up, but I tell you what, it's kind of interested me a little bit. I pay a little bit more right now with that plus cable, but I'm learning on the fly how to kind of find the different ways to watch as I want to watch it, almost like my own little menu.
Yeah, and somebody's going to make a lot of money if they figure out how to, create some platform where everything is all in one place. Mm-hmm. So whatever you subscribe to is, you have your own specific channel lineup just for everything you own. And I know some of the cable companies are working on that type of a thing, and the sooner the better, because when you're flipping from platform to platform, say from cable to, something that's being streamed, it's just not as elegant as just hitting two buttons and, you go from ESPN to Fox.
Right.
It's not. It's a little clunky. So
yep.
They'll get it figured out.
Bob, thank you as always, man. We really, Craig, me, all of us, the people who watch the show, listen to it, the segments when we put them back up, love the insight and the information you bring to it. You've been right there in the middle of those negotiations, contracts, grant of rights, etc. It's always great to have you on the show.
My pleasure, guys, and happy holidays to the three of you and all of your viewers and listeners.
You too. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports CEO executive with us, is one of the go-tos that we had, and we needed it back when we first heard about Texas and Oklahoma, the SEC, and much more.
Yeah, you found him pretty early on, I guess, through Twitter, and I know a lot of other people have picked up on Bob's insight as well, and that's great that he's able to give us that point of view that not a lot of people have experience or knowledge with, because we're not all TV execs who have been in these big types of meetings and negotiations and things like that. But he was very helpful in steering through a lot of that Pac-12 mess and what became of that. And now I'd imagine we're going to be talking to him a bit more regularly again with whatever happens here. Unfortunately, tomorrow, I don't think we're going to, I guess, I don't know when that's going to be going through the courts.
Well, there still may not be an actual public decision.
Right.
They can discuss what they're talking about tomorrow.
That's the next big shoe to drop now in terms of all of this that we're talking about. Like, well, hey, could this happen? Could that happen? Could this happen? Well, it all depends on what happens tomorrow, first of all.
Right.
And so I hope that while we're on the air that there's a decision of some sort made for Florida State to have a clear path forward. But if not, we'll have a lot to talk about, I'm sure, on the back end of Christmas break. So, yeah, it's only getting ramped back up now at this point.
Well, I saw Pat Forty, who put out a tweet, "Thank you, Florida State, for this latest, salvo. Well, I just started my vacation for the holidays in Peru."
That's what I was saying, is like it happened right before everybody breaks for Christmas. I just wish we would have come back and like you could gone in the new year with all of this. But now it's going to be, I'm sure for the Christmas table in Tallahassee and Chapel Hill and various other places, it's going to be all of the rage. And might have been regardless, but there's some more gasoline that could be poured on that fire tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes.
Hey, I had somebody that's a big BYU fan reach out to me in a direct message. Eric.
You got Mickey, right?
No, that's tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Eric, who reached out to me and said that there is at least some smoke about the possibility of Gary Bohannon and BYU. Former Baylor quarterback who then, of course, was injured, was USF. Great teammate, great young man, hell of a leader. Has been beaten up a little bit physically, didn't get a chance to play much this year. But that was interesting. They asked me about what kind of player he'd be. I said, it just depends on how healthy he is. But would love to see him get another opportunity, and if it fits within the BYU system.
Yeah, I think that Gary's a great athlete and a great leader and a great teammate and really good person from all indications. I say all indications because I don't know him personally on that level, but based on my experiences and just hearing from others who do know him, thumbs up across the board. But he went to USF 2 years ago after getting beat out by Blake Shapen, which was a very controversial decision by Dave Aranda and the staff that Shapen was the guy. It was a very weird situation there at the end of their Sugar Bowl championship run where, Gary's the guy for most of the year. He gets hurt against Kansas State. Shapen takes over. Shapen manages them offensively along with a really good defense. That's really what led them, but is able to keep the boat afloat while Gary was hurt for about a month and was able to win a couple games, including, help win the Big 12 title with the stellar first half. And then he gets hurt and Gary comes back and he's less than 100%. And then he starts the Sugar Bowl and plays and clearly wasn't fully healthy, but didn't have a great game, but it was okay because that defense was really good and won them that Sugar Bowl. So he had a hand in a great run, but then he left after that decision, and I know the fan base was torn on who the guy should have been, and I was wondering, what's going to happen if Gary goes off to USF, especially seeing what's happened at Baylor since he left, and he goes and tears it up, but it's been anything but that. I mean, he's been hurt or not really performing all that well, so I don't know, what he's still got, as far as juice goes, left, but I hope he finds a great spot for him and he can kind of get back to where he was a couple years ago and stay healthy. And if that's at BYU, I know they could certainly, stand to improve offensively for sure, but at quarterback as well. So, yeah, that'd be a very intriguing option for the Cougars, and need to dig into that a little bit more if that does happen, but that'd be interesting.
All right, when we come back, Garrett, what are you going to do here? Because we have Paul's top five.
Let's do the Dons live into break 7, and then we'll come back with top 5.
All right, let's do this before that. You watched Connolly. No, you did not. The Connolly-Jasper game.
No, but I am familiar with Ty Anthony Smith.
Okay, Ty Anthony Smith had been committed to A&M, and then late last night made a decision that he's flipping to Texas. When I spoke to their head coach to get some prep work for our broadcast for Jasper and Connolly, man, they had a bunch of good players at Jasper, but this is something that was interesting as, again, A&M had a nice class, but UT yet another one they plucked off the vine in Ty Anthony Smith of Jasper.
Yeah, I mean, Sark's really going to have to screw this thing up at this point. I mean, with the way they're just operating on all cylinders and they're able to just have the perfect timing of being where they are, and maybe if they had finished, with 8-4 and made a, respectable bowl game, they still might have pulled Ty Anthony Smith anyways with all the changes going on in College Station. I mean, they're always going to be able to recruit well, but they are really, as a old compadre used to say, cooking with fish grease right now in Austin, and it doesn't seem like there's anything in the way of that, anytime soon, no matter what happens in the semifinal game, because just the way they've been recruiting, the way all of the college football rules now, feed into a school like that, as opposed to schools now that are scrambling around, where's our NIL money going to come from, and where's this going to come from, and they don't have any of those issues. In fact, all of this just empowers them even more, really. So, yeah, that's a really good get and a really good class. That's going to be a really nice, first step into the SEC for them. And man alive, they're going to about to start producing a lot more NFL guys too. They kind of fell off, just over the last few years with everything that had not been maybe up to snuff or about average or what have you. They had a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to the NFL, and now you're starting to see where that's about to change in a major way. First rounders are going to be regular once again, and just having deep classes getting drafted are going to be regular occurrences once again. So, yeah, he's got it operating on all cylinders, and they're in a really good spot heading into the SEC next year.
All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina out today and tomorrow. We will tell you this again. We are on tomorrow live from 8:30 to 11:30 Central Time. Mac Rhodes, Brett McMurphy, Zach Barnett, Mickey Spagnola, among other guests that we'll have. And then we are going to replay the show in the afternoon during our regular time. Mac will be in studio with us tomorrow. And then all of next week we're off. Everybody gets to go do whatever they want to do. all of next week. And then also on Monday the 1st, with all the bowl games going on, we'll be back on the air again live on January 2nd. If there is anything that is earth-shattering enough for us to jump in live, we will do that. I'll be around town, and we'll do that if, in fact, that happens. I doubt it will, but you never know based on, again, what might happen with Florida State. Florida State has also got to be very careful. They may get this and win this, and then what happens? Are they going to be an independent for a year or two, or are they positive that they're going to land where they want to land, wherever that pillow or brick wall might be?
See, I'm just going to cut to the chase. That's typically what I do anyways. It's just how I'm built. I don't believe for a single solitary second a single word of anybody who says, well, they might not have a landing spot in the SEC. I don't believe that whatsoever. Not a chance that they would just be left out in the cold. Now, could there be a situation where they have to go Indy for like a year? Yeah, maybe because of just timing and legalities or something along those lines. What that would be, I don't know. Could they be in a situation where they'd have to pull like an Oregon State, Washington State for like a year and do something along those lines, whether it be independent or some type of an arrangement with a conference? I mean, I guess that's better than 0% chance, sure. But you cannot tell me with a straight face that there would not be a landing spot in either the SEC or the Big Ten for Florida State if they were to make themselves available. I do not believe that whatsoever. I think that that's just kind of part of like massaging the story to keep interest and to make there something be a little bit, oh no, what if this doesn't work out? Because I mean, do you with me, Garrett? I don't think for a single second that they're in danger of not having a spot somewhere.
No, they're a hot commodity. I mean, they are a brand. They're a blue blood. If you have an opportunity to snag them up, they're going to bring consistent revenue to you no matter what conference you're in. You're getting them.
Yeah, the Big Ten, well, they're not AAU. Give me a freaking break, dude. I don't believe for a single second that would stop you from having your foot firmly in Florida all of a sudden and all that comes with that and the geography and everything. So I know that's a part of the story, and that's probably what you have to say right now in some cases, but I don't believe that for a second.
I'm not saying that me.
No, I'm not talking to you.
I'm just saying that there is at least that now.
Yeah, it was in Wetzel's article is brought up,
Exactly
but I
right.
just don't believe that for a second, no.
All right, when we come back, we'll have Paul's Top 5 tomorrow live, 8:30 to 11 Central in the morning. Just to let you know one more time, this is 365. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I say that for Florida State. I say that for a couple schools. There are others that might not be so fortunate that if they were to do that. But Florida State.
At least not SEC Big Ten.
Right. North Carolina, they're going to be fine. They're going to have a spot somewhere.
All right, we got a break. The Paul's Top 5. We could go on forever, but we do need to break, and Paul's Top 5 is next. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco, a 48-foot walk-in humidor. Cohiba, Padron, Rocky Patel, Ashton, Macanudo, My Father, Romeo and Julieta. I mean, there's just tons of great brands of cigars. It all depends, kind of like what you want, like soft drinks or like tennis shoes. Lots of brands, some like some better than others, and they have everything you could imagine. One of my favorites is La Fontana, which is a smooth cigar, Churchill length or smaller. And I just kind of all of a sudden, Carol said, hey, you may like this one. And I do. And they also have the Torpedo Edge if you want it, if that's the kind of feel you want to. They have Vita Dreams, a CBD product for when you want to maybe fall asleep a little bit more peacefully, a little more relaxed, and maybe calm your head a little bit. And that is something that I use at times to go to sleep at night. And you don't have any after effects when you wake up, whether it's in the middle of the night or the next morning. Also, they have CBD products, but also THC called Bad Days for chronic pain. I know people who have used it, and they say it works for really, really chronic, very bad pain. Carol, Ashley, and Cheyenne, a great place if you're in the Waco area still looking for a Christmas gift. They have gift cards and or go buy a box of cigars for someone that you're getting a gift for that might have brought them up. Town West Shopping Center, Don Humidor and Coffee Beans between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, how lovely are your SUVs. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, I love the trucks you have for me. Strong and tough with luxury, room for all my family. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, you are the dealership for me.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com. It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome back. 365 Sports, Paul Catalina and Garrett Ross giving you this very special Top 5 today. And Garrett, I thought we would, since I've talked so much about recruiting in the transfer portal, as we're going into the holidays, I think we need to talk about the CFP games and some of those issues. So today we'll talk about Michigan and Bama, and tomorrow we'll talk about Texas and Washington. And I'm at a point, mental health-wise, where I can discuss this without flying into a rage.
It sounds like you're barely there, though.
I mean, look, I'm over the finish line. I'm over the finish line. I'm not completely I'm still maybe taunting people and yelling.
Rightfully so.
But I'm at a point where I've accepted it. I've moved mostly on, and we can talk about these games. It didn't help that I just read an article about Florida State and their future and how this all came to be. But here we go. Number 5, can Jim Harbaugh get over the hump? He has gotten them to this point, but last year got upset by TCU. Everyone was shocked by that.
Right.
I wasn't so much. I really wasn't. I wasn't shocked by anything that happened in last year's 2 CFP games. I wasn't shocked that TCU beat Michigan. I was shocked that they controlled the game for as long as they did. But I was not shocked that they won that game because I do think that the Big Ten sometimes does not have, throughout their schedule, the kind of speed and athleticism, we'll talk about that in a second, that some of the other leagues do, and that includes the Big 12. And they're not used to that, and they're not used to seeing those things, especially when you get some of the schedules that they've had. That will change in the modern Big Ten. But can Jim Harbaugh go toe-to-toe with an SEC foe, with a classic dynastic team in Alabama, and maybe not even Alabama's best playoff team?
Oh, it's not their best.
But go toe-to-toe with these SEC athletes and outmuscle them. That's going to be the question.
I'm going to say no, he can't. I'm not necessarily saying he can't for the future, but in this instance, no, he can't. I think that while Michigan is a really good team, I think their deficiencies at the skill player positions, mainly on defense in their secondary, is something that's going to be exposed by Alabama. I think in the trenches, they can hang for the most part. But at the end of the day, once it gets into the fourth quarter, about that mid-second half of that fourth quarter, I think you see Alabama kind of start leaning on them. They have the pieces in place. They have the skill set, like your running back, obviously with Corum and J.J. McCarthy. They have the offensive. But I think on the defensive side, particularly that secondary, I think that's going to be what kind of hinders them in this game and why I don't think Harbaugh gets over the hill this year.
Yeah. Number 4, is Michigan healthy enough along the offensive line? They had problems late in the year with the offensive line, which was the strength of their team, and lost Zach Zinter at the end of the year, too, who is one of their best offensive linemen and a guy who's going to be an NFL player this year, but he's out. I mean, they're not going to have Zach Zinter for this game. Alabama is still good on defense. Mm-hmm. They're not classic Alabama, like, overwhelming on defense, but they're still really good and really efficient on that side of the ball, outside of the penalties for the most part. Another thing that we will talk about in a second. But is Michigan healthy enough on the offensive line to do what they've done? J.J. McCarthy threw 1 touchdown pass in the last 4 games because he didn't have to do any of that. But he's going to have to throw the ball more. They're going to have to protect him more. They cannot just expect to win this game with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. They're going to have to do that, and they're going to have to protect the quarterback. Can they do it with, Dallas Turner and those guys coming at you all night long?
I mean, I would love to say yes, because when you look at Michigan, I believe they won the Joe Moore Award last year for the best offensive line in the nation. They're always in the mix, right? So when they see it, when you look at Michigan, in my eyes, and they have an offensive lineman go down, I feel confident that they can have somebody step in and kind of fill that void. While there's going to be a step back, I think they can handle that situation better than most teams. But that being said, looking at how Alabama handled up and matched Georgia in the trenches in the SEC championship game, I think it's going to be more difficult than expected this time out in this matchup.
Yeah. All right. Now, I know that these have been mostly Michigan questions, and I do have a couple of Bama ones here. One, can Michigan contain Milroe on the run? And can Bama get him out of the run, not only called plays, but how many improvised plays can they have? Because where I think Jalen Milroe has gotten people is not necessarily on their called quarterback runs, which those can work out great for them. I mean, you saw in the LSU game, they had 2 like straight up called Milroe runs that wound up in touchdowns. Those were like straight up. But they also got a couple first downs in that game that were, I'm just going to run.
Yeah.
And that's where he gets you. Like, that's how he got Auburn. Like that. Those are the things, can you get the best improviser at quarterback in the country right now? Because look, Michael Penix is great, and Quinn Ewers is really good, and he's on his way up, and J.J. McCarthy's a really steady dude. But in these playoffs, the only person I think that if he would have been healthy that improvises like Jalen Milroe, honestly, of any of the playoff eligible teams, or maybe it's 2, is Bo Nix and Jordan Travis. And, of course, Jordan Travis is hurt, and that's why they're not in the playoff. And then, that and other reasons. But Bo Nix, those are the improvisational guys. Quinn Ewers is not an improviser.
No, not at all.
He's really skilled. Michael Penix may be a little bit more, but, again, those guys are more classic quarterback types. And Jalen Milroe is he's jazz, baby. Like, it's the notes you don't hear from Jalen Milroe, right? That make him really good. So can Bama get him out on that? And if they do, can Michigan, after a couple times, figure out how to defend it and how to make sure that you have some, like on those 3rd and longs that he just runs and picks up. Do you have somebody out there that's going to spy on him and make sure that he is just take off and run? Because there are routes that Jalen Milroe just does not throw well. So those almost you don't have to worry about. Yeah, I'd more worry about, like, I want one of these linebackers to be right here or a safety up in the box that can come and get him.
I think that's really going to be the difference in this game, because I don't think Michigan is able to compete and hang with Jalen Milroe doing that. I think that's what's kind of been the difference in Alabama of getting to where they are right now, is just kind of cutting him loose, letting him improvise and play his own ball. That's what makes them really unique. I'm concerned that Michigan's not going to be able to do that. You bring up a good point. Like, his throwing is inconsistent. That's what makes him special. But given this circumstance, I don't know that Michigan can contain him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, number 2, can Bama be less sloppy? This is why people talk about them not being the classic Bama team, because they are kind of a wreck at times. They are a hot mess. If like whatever they are, like, it's worked out for them. They found a way through it in every game but Texas. But they commit way more penalties than most Saban teams do. They do way more, like, just dumb stuff that is not indicative of a Saban team. A lot of that has to do with inexperience. But at this point in the year, this is going to be their 14th game. It shouldn't be that way, and it probably will be. And I think that's what's going to keep Michigan tight in this game. And that's what keeps most teams tight with Bama, is that they don't roll along well enough without committing a mistake that's a drive killer. Yeah. Two false starts on a drive. I think false starts are worse than holding penalties. You get a holding penalty, yeah, it sucks, but
I mean, there's holding on every play, so I would agree with that.
But if you get a false starts are drive killers.
Yeah.
It just, it takes your 3rd and 2 to a 3rd and 7. You've got to now adjust on the fly. If you're playing a good defense like Michigan, like you've now just played into their hands, if Bama loses this game, I can almost promise you right now, what happened is that they could not get out of their own way.
I would agree with that, and I don't think that there's any way they could tighten it up. I think that you try to put a point of emphasis on it during this extended period before that you have practicing. But at this point in the season, man, like, this is who you are, right? Yeah. Like, there's no way if it could have been fixed. And by this point in the season, Saban would have fixed it. Mm-hmm. I think you just they're lucky enough to be one of the very few programs in the nation whose athleticism can overcome the mistakes. And they're going to have to bank on that happening again against the Wolverines.
Yeah, they are. And number 1, can Michigan handle the SEC athleticism that they're going to see? They have only seen this once, kind of, this year when they played against Ohio State.
Correct.
And Ohio State pushed them to the brink. So when you are faced, and look, maybe twice, Penn State, that game was not a blowout. Like, that was just a dominant defensive performance.
And they just ran the ball all over Penn State. They didn't even have to throw against them.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have to, but those are the two teams that had, if some of their guys went in the portal, SEC teams would call, right?
Yes.
Those are the two teams that would be the case. Like, if the whole Ohio State roster and the whole Penn State roster decided tomorrow, screw it, we're leaving, and they got in the portal, believe me, Bama and Georgia would be calling.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So those are the teams that would do that, and those are the two teams that pushed Michigan the most this year. And Michigan's defense is excellent. It is absolutely excellent. There's no denying that, but they have not had to see this at all. And they've not had to see, Jermaine Burton is not even the 10th best Alabama wide receiver that has been in the last 4 years.
No, not even close.
But he's the second best receiver they would have seen this year.
No, go ahead.
And that's not to mention Bond. That dude is just,
he's a freak.
Yeah, and Bond is the dude that he's the one who, when it all breaks down with Milroe, that Bond's the one who
he's gonna find a hole.
They have this mind meld where it's all right, Like, I'll find you. He was the one in Auburn. I've heard Brad Nessler go, Isaiah Bond, like 8 times this year, and those are the things. And I wonder if Michigan can handle that. I think that they're better set up to than they were in the past, but they have not seen it, and they have not seen it to the level that Alabama's going to bring it to them, especially since the quarterback position is going to be part of that athleticism, which they did not see in Kyle McCord or Drew Aller early this year. Jalen Milroe does things like we talked about just a second ago that those other guys just don't do.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what this is going to come down to. I don't think Michigan can match Bama's athleticism. I think if you bring up a good point because, like, we played Marvin Harrison, but I don't even think Emeka Ekeba played in that game. So you haven't seen, like, multiple receivers on the field. Talia Tagovailoa has been the closest quarterback that you can draw up that you've seen compared to Jalen Milroe, and that's not even close.
No.
Not even remotely close. And I also think that that's kind of what they ran into last year when they faced TCU. TCU was freaking loaded, like at the skill positions, and that's something that Michigan wasn't expecting. I think they are going. They probably realize that, and they're going to continue to try to get the playmakers in through the recruiting and the transfer portal. But at this moment, I don't see them being able to compete with Bama.
No. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Top 5. We're back again tomorrow with another one. This is 365 Sports.
That's Paul Catalina and the Top 5 on Alabama and Michigan. We'll, of course, have another one tomorrow. Want to thank everybody who was a part of what we did today, including those of you in the chat room. And, of course, even the text line had a couple of that one text line that was a great question. Our sponsors who do what they do every day. And, Craig, thank you. A busy day as we woke up to the Florida State news, and hope we gave you a lot of different angles and heard from you as well on what might happen, the implications and consequences, and more.
Yeah, appreciate everybody, and I guess we'll have one final show tomorrow before we take a much-needed, I think, break for, like everybody, the Christmas holidays. But one more time, we're going to be live tomorrow morning. We got a super chat all of a sudden here at the end.
Yeah, Katie Rader, thank you. Bob is a rock star interview. Yes, he is. Bob Thompson, Merry Christmas. Katie Rader, thanks for the super chat.
Yeah, and I think I got a DM from you, Katie, that I haven't looked at just yet, so I'll go back and look at that. I apologize. I haven't been on Twitter a ton here in recent weeks, but I'll get to that. And, yeah, we'll be here. I guess you probably need to remind everybody tomorrow morning live, and then we'll have a replay in the afternoon.
So tomorrow, we'll be live a lot differently than others. And one of the reasons is Mac Rhodes will be live with us in studio at 10. First time he's spoken since the decision about Dave Aranda and his staff. But also, we're like a week away, right? A week and a half away from the pavilion, the Foster Pavilion, the basketball arena opening up. In fact, Baylor's about to close out the Farrell Center with that game coming up against Mississippi Valley State.
Well, I'll also say that I don't know if there was any AD who spoke as much as openly about expansion and realignment over the last year as Mac Rhodes did. I mean, there was others that talked about it, but he was pretty much the one putting out the message the Big 12 was open for business, along with Brett Yormark, and letting it be known that whatever was going on before any moves were actually officially made, that the Big 12 was going to be ready and waiting. And so I'm interested to hear his thoughts. Not that he'll probably reveal too much, but interested to hear what he thinks of all that's going on with Florida State and just the ramifications of that, and amongst other topics in college sports right now. So, yeah, that ought to be interesting.
Kyle Visser, I think while you guys are out next week, let Kim Coulter and I, and maybe a few other substitutes, take over the show. That would be fun. That would be fun. I'd love to see it happen. Garrett, great stuff today, weaving in and out of so many stories. Thanks to Devin Gardner, Tim Younger, and also Dequan Finn for being a part of the show and setting that up with us. Again tomorrow, 8:30 to 11:30 Central in the morning, so you need to get your you-know-what up and be a part of the show tomorrow. I'm David Smoak for Craig and Garrett. And for all of our sponsors, good night. This is 365 Sports.